At my first job, I had a colleague named Molly. She was a sweet, kind woman. No matter how tough the situation was, she would always manage to make people smile. Back then, I was looking for an apartment when I asked Molly. She said she had rented one of her rooms to a guy and she lives in the other one. But then she suggested me something.
You know what? Come live with me for a couple of days, till you find a good house. I'll do all the arrangements.
Honestly, being the small-town girl in a big city did scare me about safety, so I happily agreed to stay at Molly's for a few days. And this is where the story begins. Molly's house was two-story, but the upstairs needed repair, so no one used that area. The downstairs had 2 bedrooms. The big one was Molly's, and the other one belonged to a man named JP. The first time I saw JP was the day I moved in. Molly and I were arranging my bed in the living room when I saw JP walk into the apartment. He looked weird. His hair was overgrown, and in the scorching summer, he wore this brown pullover with black jeans. At first he didn't see us, but once he turned his head hearing the sound from the living room, I got a look at his full face. He had a scar in his left eye that extended from his forehead to his left cheek. His pale green eyes gave me the creeps.
Hello, Molly. Everything all right?
Oh, yeah. JP, this is my friend Amara, and she's gonna crash here for a couple of days.
JP looked at me with a blank face. To get rid of the awkward silence, I spoke.
I hope that's fine with you? I'm actually looking for a...
He stormed out to his room, slamming the door loudly behind him.
What the... That's strange. He's pretty friendly with me. Seriously, Molly? How can you even trust a guy like that, let alone make him your roommate? Oh, come on. I have training in karate. I can take care of myself better than you.
Molly started joking to lighten up my mood, and I shrugged it off eventually. But the more days passed, the more my suspicion grew about JP. As I slept in the living room, I had a full view of the apartment at night. Molly was always a deep sleeper, so she hardly came out of her room, but JP, I don't know what the hell was wrong with him. Often at night, I would wake up hearing footsteps in the kitchen, and my drowsy eyes would find JP standing near the kitchen sink washing something. I tried to lay still just to watch what he was up to, but all he did was wash something in the kitchen, put it in a plastic bag, and then go back to his room. I didn't tell Molly about this as I wanted to get more clarity. One night, I stayed awake waiting for JP to come out of his room. After hours of waiting, I heard a subtle click of a door. The hair all over my body stood straight up in anxiety. He's coming now. Low thudding footsteps went to the kitchen and stopped. The faucet started running and I could smell bleach in the air. I slowly tilted my head to look at the kitchen.
Why are you awake so late? I thought you always slept by 11. Is anything troubling you?
I was numb with fear of having his wide, hawk-like eyes running on me. I could barely speak. My voice died down my throat. JP then hunched down to the floor, bringing his face right next to me. His filthy, warm breath touched my face, but I couldn't move away in disgust. I was that scared. My body was frozen.
You should try to get some sleep, okay?
He then leaned onto my face and kissed me on the forehead, which almost gave me a heart attack. And then we went back to the kitchen.
But it's all your assumption, Amara. You may be wrong, right? I'm definite that JP is mental. That guy can be a killer and no one will know it. I'm telling you, the way he...
Good morning, girls. What are you guys talking about?
I got quiet as soon as I saw JP. Molly looked at me and then asked him,
do you use the kitchen at night?
JP's creepy smile changed into a scary frown.
Why? Does that bother your friend?
No, JP. That's not what I meant. What do you do in the kitchen at night anyway?
Nothing. Just wash my clothes.
But you have a bathroom for that. We eat in the kitchen.
JP gave me a creepy smile and replied,
Fine. I won't do it again.
He grabbed the keys from the table and left the apartment without saying anything more. As soon as he left, I ran to Molly's room.
Amara? Wait, what are you doing?
I grabbed a bobby pin from Molly's jewelry box and walked straight to JP's room. Molly came rushing and grabbed my hand.
Amara! He's my roommate, and as an owner, I can't let you ruin his privacy. I'm telling you, he's hiding something, Molly. He's not what he seems.
But Molly didn't listen to me. Her trust in JP was so blind that she totally disregarded my words. We ended up having a fight and I left her apartment. I changed jobs as well to stay close to my family, and 6 months went by. One day, I got 2 officers visiting me at my house. They were asking questions about Molly. Her family filed a missing persons report 3 months back. The cops were searching for her, and 2 days back they found her. She was lying dead under a bridge. Her body was discovered in such a decomposed condition that it was hard to tell the cause of her death. Tears rolled down my eyes hearing this, and then JP's creepy smiling face flashed in front of my eyes. But before I could tell the cops about him, the cops said they were suspecting Molly's roommate. JP eventually went to jail on the charge of second-degree murder. But what's even more scarier is the fact that after Molly went missing, JP was the one who called her parents and insisted they file the missing persons report. The story you just saw is loosely based on the tragic death of Maribel Ramos, a 36-year-old Iraq war veteran. Maribel lived in an apartment in Orange, California, with her roommate Kwang Choi, known as KC Joy. On May 3, 2013, Casey called the cops saying Maribel hadn't come home for days. Her family reported her missing based on Casey's phone call. On May 17, 2013, the police searched a remote area in Majeska Canyon, California, and found Maribel's body in a shallow grave. The remains of her body were too decomposed to confirm the cause of death. Her boyfriend, Paul Lopez, told the authorities that Maribel had gotten into an argument with Casey about not paying rent, and she wanted him out of her place. When questioned by the police, Casey admitted to arguing with Maribel but denied all the accusations. The authorities had no evidence connecting Casey with her disappearance. However, the police noted that he had scratches on his arm. The cops also found a 911 call recording of Maribel talking about her roommate's scary behavior. The call was made 11 days prior to her death. During the trial, Casey came up with a totally different story. He said when he came home, he already found Maribel's body. He claims he thought she killed herself, and out of fear of being suspected as a murderer, he drove away the suspicion by dumping her body under that bridge. KC Joy was eventually found guilty of second-degree murder. In September 2014, Casey was sentenced to 15 years to life.
I have had too many cocktails with my friends tonight. When my vision started to blur from the intoxication, I decided to stop and go home. Everyone uses Uber, right? So even after my friends insisted on dropping me home, I refused and ordered an Uber. I just wanted to go home. My app dinged with the name James. I love that they let you know the name of the person picking you up. It makes you feel like you have a sense of familiarity with the person. I could barely stand when the black car pulled right next to me.
Oh, thank God.
I jumped in the back, buckled up, and we set off to my destination. Before the car started, I heard the locks click and didn't think much of it. Water bottles were placed in a cooler pack in the middle seat, along with a tray of snacks consisting of granola bars, Jolly Ranchers, etc. I loved it when the drivers did this. I would give them 5 stars, especially after a night of drinking. Those water bottles were a godsend. I dug through the pile of snacks and tossed a candy in my mouth.
Hey, James. Do you have any good tunes?
He didn't respond. Indeed, he heard me, or maybe I was drunk and slurring. I piped up again, this time louder after clearing my throat.
James, excuse me.
He looked at me through the rearview mirror. Sure, he answered in a cold way and turned on the music. James finally began to speak up after a few minutes of awkward silence. You been drinking tonight? I looked out the side window and replied.
Yeah, just a few drinks.
Now his eyes were stuck on the rearview mirror. One hand was on the steering wheel as he kept us steady on the road. I could tell that he was trying to catch glimpses of me without me noticing. He spoke up again, this time with a grin. What did you drink tonight? Bored with the dragging of the ride, I figured this was innocent small talk.
Well, some beers and a few shots of you-know-what.
He sat up in his seat, one arm still on the wheel. Those deep brown eyes kept flickering at me in the rearview mirror almost every couple of seconds. He started to pry. You drink tequila often? I casually replied while I kept my eyes out the window.
Sometimes. Depends on my mood.
He laughed. So you must be feeling drowsy, huh? Now I started to feel uncomfortable. Why was he questioning my level of coherence? I kept my eyes focused out the window because I was getting creeped out.
Nope. Just a little relaxed.
He kept a tight-lipped smile and then spoke. You want to be drunk, though? I have a bottle of tequila back there. I stared at my phone. Just 5 minutes more till I was home.
No thanks. I'm actually good.
He had both hands on the steering wheel now, gripping it tight and rubbing his hands against the leather. This nervous feeling rose in my gut, and I know they say never to ignore your gut feelings, but I was already in the car with this guy. I was a few minutes from my house. What was I supposed to do? I sat there and kept my eyes glued to the window. Perhaps he would just get me home without suggesting anything inappropriate if I didn't show any interest in conversing with him. Whatever I was doing seemed to work, because he changed his tune through his following response. So you're done partying for the night, huh? Responsible. I let out a short chuckle and agreed with him. I was being responsible. He piped up again, this time more friendly than before and less interrogating. Well, help yourself to the water. I have plenty. My heart started to slow and I realized that he was just trying to earn that 5-star review by being accommodating. He may be trying to be excellent. He has all these snacks and drinks in his car and free alcohol. Perhaps he was trying to get his Uber score up. He may have a family at home who he's trying to provide for. Was I being too judgmental? I silently scolded myself for the intrusive thoughts. I grabbed the water bottle, twisted the lid off, and took a couple of gulps. I saw the turn from my street ahead, and a rush of relief washed over me. That is, until he passed it. That's right, he ultimately passed my street. I sat in my seat, screwed the lid back on the water bottle, and spoke up.
Hey, you passed my street.
He didn't say a word, only smiled.
Hello? You passed my street.
What he said next made my heart jump into my throat. I know.
Wait, what? Why didn't you stop then?
That's because you aren't going home tonight. My body started to shake. I immediately opened my app to report him and call for an emergency when I got the biggest shock in my life. The Uber I ordered before getting into his car has charged me for making him wait and then not showing up. This means the car I'm in right now was never my ride home. My shaking hand slowly went to the door handle, but it was stuck. Why is it... Wait, this isn't stuck. Something is... The doors won't open from the inside. I've activated the child lock. Suddenly, he stopped the car in the middle of the empty street and turned back at me with a huge knife.
What? No, please, don't do this!
The story you just saw is loosely based on the tragical death of Samantha Josephson. 21-year-old Samantha got into Nathaniel Rowland's car after a night out in Columbia's Five Points Entertainment District. She mistook his car to be her Uber ride that would take her back to her apartment. Halfway down the journey, Samantha started suspecting Rowland's odd behavior, but it was already too late for her. She found herself trapped inside the car as Rowland had the child-proof locks on. Her body, as later found, with 120 stab wounds in remote woods 65 miles from Columbia. No outright motive for the killing was suggested by prosecutors during the course of Rowland's trial, but Judge Newman said the killer was totally heartless. When the news reporters questioned about Rowland's motive, the top prosecutor, Byron Gibson, said it was absolutely a random act of violence. It was a casual Sunday. I was enjoying my drink sitting on the porch when my wife slammed a list on my face.
You need to get these before the guests arrive. Hurry up now!
My wife could be pretty controlling when it comes to house parties. We were hosting one that night. I grabbed my keys and said to myself, "Have a happy weekend."
Take Chad with you. I don't want him to spoil my recipes.
I watched Chad sitting on the floor playing with his blocks. "Come on, kiddo, we're going out." Chad never misbehaves with me. He gives me no trouble and is so considerate at such a young age. The Walmart is the closest thing to my home, so I drove straight there. While parking, I saw a woman struggling with a shopping cart. All the carts were lined up outside the entrance door. People would take them and go in, but This woman was only holding on to the cart but not pulling it. Her head just moved side to side.
Dad, let's go inside.
My son pulled my t-shirt. I ignored the weird lady and went inside the Walmart.
Attention all shoppers. There's a 35% discount on groceries today. Enjoy the benefit and have a wonderful day.
I grabbed a shopping cart from a man at the billing counter. He gave this weird smile and pushed his cart in my direction with one finger. He had such filthy hands. Anyways, I walked past him with the cart to follow my list. My son Chad was sitting inside the cart, all goofy and funny. We had a fun time. Just then, I heard a woman yelling.
Good lord, are you trying to run over me?
After that, I heard lots of footsteps and whispers. Then it all went normal. I once again shrugged my shoulder and went to go get myself some beer. Chad was right beside me. I was facing the freezer checking out my options, and suddenly, a flash behind me. I turned around and saw no one, yet I saw something run from this aisle to the other in seconds.
What's wrong, Dad?
Did you see anyone, bud?
No. Did you?
My son kept staring at me with big wide eyes. We were alone in that section and it felt very creepy. No. Let's see. What do we have next? I grabbed my drinks and soon walked away to the groceries with Chad. Now we were walking through the maze of aisles. Man, I never realized Walmart is thinked big.
Dad! Dad! Toys!
I smiled like I had been defeated and said, Oh no, Dad's gonna lose some money!
And Chad's gonna get some new toys!
We were walking when suddenly I heard a rattling sound behind me. I looked back and saw the same woman from the parking lot. She was standing next to the shelves filled with munchies. Her head looked at me while her hand went side to side and kept picking up chips, cheese balls, all that junk you could eat on weekends. After staring at me with a blank face, she suddenly smiled big. Whoa, I kid you not, I've never seen such bad teeth. The woman's teeth were yellow and pale at the same time. Okay, that's enough. I walked faster. After getting toys for Chad, I didn't stop. I was almost done with the list and I only needed beef for the meat steaks. The meat section is at the end. I was at the last turn when I stopped. The woman was standing at the end of my path, but this time she was dancing, running, and returning to the cart again. It was so freaking creepy to watch. Suddenly, she grabbed a box of tampons and rushed to me. I was so startled that I forgot to move. She leaned right into my face and asked me the weirdest question I've ever been asked.
Do they have whipping cream?
They have it, but I don't know if it's in this section.
Oh, shut up! I know what I'm doing!
Sorry, what?
No, I wasn't saying that to you.
She began talking to herself. She could barely keep her hands still. I saw her arms were filled with scratches and needle marks. It all made sense to me. This woman is high as a kite. She whispered while moving her hands in the air, like she was driving away a fly.
Get off me! Go away!
But clearly it was the drugs. I expected my son to get scared by her, but somehow Chad wasn't intimidated at all. Instead, he was surprised. I bet he thought the girl was trying to be funny. Hey, do you need help? I can call the security.
No, it's just my head. It never stops hurting.
I know, I get it. Let me take you to the help desk, okay? She nodded her head slowly and started to walk with me. When we reached the help desk, I heard the woman yell.
What now? What did she do this time?
Okay, so people did see her being all weird and didn't offer to help her. Great. I looked at the woman and said, Ma'am, please call an ambulance. She's not well.
Why? What's happening to her?
Her head hurts. Just call the paramedics, okay? The woman looked at the poor lady, still muttering to herself, and asked,
Ma'am, anything wrong with you?
She suddenly bent her head, saying,
My head, it never stops itching.
There was a big wound at the back of her head. It seemed like she had scratched the flesh out. Her white skull could be seen from that wound. She picked it so deep. The help desk woman screamed and fainted on the floor. People turned their heads to us. I looked at the poor woman who seemed completely scared. Her hands were close to her chest and her eyes were wide in fear. I'm calling for help, okay? You need to go to the hospital.
No!
She left her cart and ran to the glass door. The toxic effects were so much in control of her mind that she didn't bother to jump on the glass. The window broke with her weight, and she fell on the pavement outside. When the paramedics took her away, she was lying unconscious on the stretcher. Shards of glass were poking out of her face. That was the last time I saw her. I went to check on her at the hospital, but the cops said that she ran away from the hospital that night. I just hope she's better now. The story you just saw is based on this true footage captured at Walmart. A man was out shopping with his son when they came across this weird lady. The woman was constantly moving and fidgeting. At first, the man thought that she was being funny, but soon he realized that that isn't the case. The lady kept jumping and turning for no reason. Then suddenly, the lady approached the man asking about whipping cream. The man, obviously shocked, didn't know what to say at first, but then he told her to check out other aisles. The lady smiled creepily, biting her nails, and then walked away. She kept talking loudly while her body was totally out of control. The lady was later taken to the paramedics. She was a drug addict, and we hope she lives a happy life now. The friend trio is a powerful dynamic, even if it gets toxic. A lot of other people can come and go on the peripherals, but few of them stick. I think they tend to get scared off by the insanity that goes on between the three main friends. I constantly think back to one example when I try to explain this. Back when I was a teenager, I played a lot of Manhunt with my two friends Mark and Reese. To us, it was really just a cooler name for hide and seek. We also boxed and played airsoft and that sort of thing, but Manhunt was our favorite thing because it was the easiest one to get people for. We would always go to this one park to do stuff. It had two areas with a creek running between them and a couple bridges connecting them. One side was wide open and flat, while the other side was hillier, with a lot more trees and bushes. There was one night where there was one of those full supermoons out, so we brought 4 other people along with us to play Manhunt. The side with all the foliage was the better side for Manhunt, so that's where we started out. Unfortunately, we were only able to get through a single round before we were attacked by this insane feral homeless dude. He was completely off it and acting super territorial. It looked like he'd just come back from transforming into a werewolf. All of his clothes were tore up, his hair was matted together, and his skin was completely crusted over. He jumped out of the bushes and scared one of our friends so bad that they almost went home. But Mark, Reese, and I stepped in.
Ah, get away! Get away! Get away! This is my bush! All these bushes are my bushes! This is my territory!
Hey man, what's your problem? Leave her alone! This is a public park!
Do you want to get bit, huh? I'll turn you!
Dude, there's 1 of you and 7 of us! Hey man, this dude's crazy. We probably shouldn't mess with him. Let's just go to the other side. Yeah, I think you're right. Reese was always the sensible one who kept us out of trouble. We decided to leave Feral Dude alone and went to the other side of the creek to avoid him. We also made a rule not to go across the creek where his quote-unquote territory was, so that nobody would run into him. On that note, we had to convince a few of the others to keep playing, as they were really scared by the encounter. We managed to keep things going, though, and we played a few more rounds of Manhunt without any issue. There was one problem, though. That side of the park wasn't great for hide and seek because of the fact that it was so open. Mark was the first one to be the hunter and found everybody in about 2 minutes, and then, when he was hiding, he kept getting found before everyone else. He certainly had some words for it. Man, this blows! This side of the park sucks for Manhunt! There's nowhere to hide! Maybe you're just bad at hiding with that big fat head of yours. Yeah, right. I'd like to see you last longer than 3 minutes. I will. Just watch me, if you can find me. Since he was complaining about it, I made it a point to be the last one found the next round. I got down and dirty with a handful of bushes that were there to avoid being seen. By the end of the round, I had been impaled by 3 different thorns and was covered in dirt, but I won. That meant I was up to be the hunter for the next round. But of course, I made sure to rub it into Mark's face. "See? I told you! You just gotta be good!" I could tell he was upset because he didn't have a comeback. All he had was the mean look in his eyes. It only made me excited to see what he would do in the next round. I found everybody else pretty quickly, but I couldn't find Mark. At first, I was glad that he was stepping up his game. All 6 of us went looking for him, but after a while, still, nobody had seen him. We searched all over the park, in every bush and behind every tree, but he was nowhere to be found. After long enough, we all reconvened at the starting point. We were starting to suspect that Mark had broken the rules about not going to the other side, and we were about to give up and start calling his name when we heard a scream.
Ah!
A chill ran through my whole body. I knew it was Mark, and it was coming from the other side of the park. Everyone rushed over and followed the sound of the screaming to the largest bridge over the creek. We stopped there, knowing he was below us, and now we could hear something else. Scraps of clothing and both of Mark's shoes were floating down the creek, too. The others were too scared, but Reese and I jumped down to help Mark. That's when we saw the struggle that was underway beneath the bridge. Mark and the freak were fighting each other, both of them screaming like crazy people and rolling around in the shallow current. But by the time we got there, Mark was starting to lose. The freak was trying to hold his face underneath the water. Reese and I ran over and pulled Mark's attacker off of him.
Run, man! Run! Screw that!
We held the feral freak back so Mark could run away, but instead he picked up a rock the size of his fist and smacked the dude upside the head with it. Reese and I both felt him go limp in our arms, so we dropped him face up, just to make sure he wouldn't drown. Then we ran off. We helped Mark up the banks and met up with the others. Our bro was covered in bite and scratch marks all over his body. Obviously, we all went home and never played in that park again, since the police never even bothered to do anything about it. Also, unsurprisingly, none of those other people hung out with us again. But Mark, Reese, and I were still best friends for many years afterwards.
My name is Julia. I'm 9 years old. My family has this really cool house. I love it. There are 2 acres that me and my friends can play on. It's all fenced in, and the rules are we can go anywhere we want, just as long as we stay inside the fence. Then there's the river. It runs right behind the house, and there's a neat sandy area where we can go wading. But we're only allowed to do that if a grown-up is with us. Dad says the house used to be a farmhouse. I love all of it except for my closet. I hate that. Actually, I guess I should say that I used to hate it. I don't hate it anymore. Not after what finally happened. See, this clown was living in my closet. But now that I think about it, he didn't actually live there. He just showed up there from time to time. And he wasn't a regular clown. Oh, he wore clown clothes, but his face, it still scares me to think about it. He wore this long, distorted white rubber mask, kind of like Michael Myers from Halloween. It was really scary. I mean, really, really scary. It was Saturday night. Mom and Dad had just tucked me in. I was just starting to fall asleep when all of a sudden, my closet door started to open. Then this hand reached around and got hold of the door and opened it some more. I saw a face. I'm not sure, but I think my heart might have stopped beating. It was a clown. He didn't do anything, though. He just put his finger to his lips, like he was telling me to shh. Then he looked around the room. I guess he didn't see what he was looking for because he just waved at me and closed the closet door again. Ah! Mom! Dad! Julia, honey, what's wrong? I had trouble talking. I was so scared. What is it, baby? I pointed at the closet. What? The closet? What about the closet? Clown! I saw a clown! A really, really scary clown! Mom laughed. Julia, honey, there's nothing in the closet. You had a bad dream, that's all. I ignored the matter at that time. but I saw him again, 1 week later. I was rolled over onto my right side. I always go to sleep on my right side. I was just starting to go to sleep when the closet door squeaked. My eyes shot open. I pulled my blanket up over my head and then lowered it just enough so I could peek out. It was him again, as ugly as always. He looked at me again, went, "Shh," looked around my room, then smiled and waved and closed the door. I didn't scream. I didn't do anything. While I was laying there trying to calm down, I thought of something. In all the times I'd seen that clown, he never once tried to do anything bad to me. He never tried to scare me, never tried to hurt me. So what the heck was he doing? And why was he in my closet? After that night, things got a little better. He still showed up. In fact, he started showing up more often. But every time he did, it was exactly like every other time. It actually got a little boring. I even started waving back at him. One night, it was raining heavily. I fell asleep fast that day. Around 2 a.m., I woke up hearing my closet door creak. I looked over, and there he was. He raised his finger to his lips. Shh! Then he stooped down to look at something, just like always. But tonight was different, way different. He froze. His eyes got wide. Then they got wider. The clown threw the closet door open and came rushing into my room. His mouth was wide open and his teeth looked like something from a monster. He was squinting and his hands were raised over his head. His fingers, with their long, pointy black nails, were curled like claws. As he ran toward my bed, he opened his mouth and screamed.
Rah!
I knew I was going to die. I just knew it. He was going to rip me into tiny little bits and then eat what was left. Yet I couldn't move an inch in shock. The clown raced to the side of my bed and stopped for a second. Then he dropped to his knees, shoved his arms under the bed, and came out with this huge, wriggling, slimy sneak, which must have climbed in from the window at the sides of the lake. The clown smashed its head on the floor, then raised it up and smashed it down again. And again and again, he kept smashing the thing on the floor until it went limp. After a few seconds, he looked up at me.
You okay, kid?
He said in a deep voice that sounded kind of like he had gravel in his throat. I couldn't answer him. Heck, I couldn't even think.
Hey, listen, I'm sorry about this. Don't worry about the mess. It'll be gone before your mom comes in the morning. It just dissolves itself away. Might leave a bit of a stain on the rug, though. Sorry, but nothing I can do about that.
I was shaking really bad. All I could do was say, What? The clown reached into his funny colored jacket and came out with a cigar. He held it up.
You mind?
I just stared.
Oh, don't worry, I don't smoke 'em. Just sucking on one gives me my nicotine fix. Calms me down. I gave up actually smoking 'em about 20 years ago, but I just can't kick 'em entirely. Bad habit, I know, but hey, nobody's perfect, right?
The clown peeled the plastic wrapper off the cigar and stuck it between his pointy teeth. I kept staring, my mouth hanging open.
I guess you're a little weirded out, huh?
I slowly nodded.
Yeah, typical. Don't feel bad. Pretty much every kid I've ever saved has reacted the same way as you.
Who are you? He said, shaking his head.
I'm Wrinkles. Wrinkles the clown. I'll have to leave now.
After that night, I saw Wrinkles only once. One day, a homeless man tried to abduct me on my way to school. The moment the man grabbed my hand, something happened to him. He started coughing blood and died on the streets, choking. When the cops were taking me back home, Wrinkles came out of this alley and waved at me. One last time, he put his finger on his lips and said,
Shh!
The story you just saw is loosely based on this home security footage found on Reddit. In this footage, you can see a little boy sleeping on his bed. The first few seconds, nothing happened, But then, slowly, the storage box attached to his bed starts moving. Slowly, the box opens up, and a weird-looking clown can be seen hiding inside it. The clown lays like this for a few seconds, trying to configure if the kid is awake or not. Once he's sure, he comes out. He then watches the kid sleep and then walks to the home security camera. Before his motives could be understood, the clown disables the camera and stops the recording. People who have seen this claim the clown is named Wrinkles, and many kids are scared of him. There's various urban legends about this clown, but no one knows if this video is really some guy playing a prank or a killer hiding in a clown costume.
My friend Marcus and I loved checking out abandoned places to kill boredom. One time, we found this old wellness center on the outskirts that had been there for ages. It didn't require much sneaking skills or a lot of equipment. The building was just surrounded by a fence. No security, no cameras, nothing. Upon entering, we found a stairway leading to the upper floor. There was something written on the wall near the stairs. I brushed the dust and the word, sauna, was revealed underneath.
I wish this place was in good shape. I'd love to take a hot steam in this cold winter.
Marcus pushed open the door and we landed in the mosaic-covered room. I suddenly felt someone's hand touching my shoulder.
Hey, stop messing with me! What? I didn't do anything. Yeah, right. You think your silly prank is gonna scare me, Marcus?
I kept on arguing when suddenly a voice came to my ears. It felt like a song. Yes, someone was singing. It was a woman singing a very well-known nursery rhyme, but in an eerie way.
Ba ba, black sheep, have you any wool? Yes, sir, 3 bags full.
Marcus and I looked at each other with fearful eyes. The way she sang felt so weird.
1 for the master, 1 for the dame, and 1 for the little boy who lives down the lane.
Who is that? Maybe some homeless woman.
The song was coming from the other end of the sauna. I flashed my light expecting to see someone there, but there was no one. But the song just went on.
1 for the master, 1 for the dame, and 1 for the little boy who lives down the lane.
Is anybody here?
1 for the master, 1 for the dame, and 1 for the little boy who lives down the lane.
The voice kept repeating these same lines again and again. We walked to the other end of the sauna and found a big jacuzzi filled with murky black water.
Look!
Marcus crouched down near the tub and picked up a small Walkman. The song was coming from it.
1 for the master, 1 for the dame, and 1 for the...
He pressed the pause button and it stopped.
Told you, there's no such thing as ghosts. Do you think someone left it here to scare us? Maybe, maybe not, but the pawn shop might pay well for this stupid antique.
Marcus took out the cassette from the Walkman and threw it on the floor. He stomped on it, crushing the poor thing into pieces.
What did you do that for? Just for fun. Let's check the other rooms. Maybe there's more crap we'll be able to sell.
Marcus turned away and I kept thinking, what are the odds? The Walkman is years old and there was no way it was still working. Also, when we walked into the building, it was all quiet. The song started playing all of a sudden. Did someone do that just to scare us?
Dude, move it! We don't have all night!
Marcus's voice brought me back to reality. Just when we were about to leave the sauna room, I heard a low boiling sound. It was like water was boiling in the distance. We looked back and noticed the jacuzzi. The dirty water stood still. There was no movement in the water, yet it made sounds like bubbles popping.
I think something's stuck inside.
What Marcus did next was stupid.
Hold this.
He snatched the flashlight from my hand and torched it on the dark water. The water was so dark that the rays of light couldn't decipher the bottom.
Are you crazy? There's something at the bottom of this tub. Come on, Marcus, don't be ridiculous.
But he didn't listen. He kept searching into the tub, churning the filthy water. My heart was racing with each passing moment.
I think I touched something. It's a little... What? What is it?
Suddenly, something jumped from the water and pulled Marcus in. He didn't even get the chance to scream. His shaking body went in, creating a huge splash.
Marcus! No!
I was terrified by the sight. Marcus was gone, and only the turned-on flashlight floated in the tub. There was no sound of a struggle, no sign of a third person. It was only me and my heavy breathing in that creepy dark sauna.
Marcus! Please! This isn't funny, man!
My throat was dry. My legs were numb in fear. I wanted to leave that place. But what about my friend? Where did he go?
Marcus!
Suddenly, bubbles appeared on the surface of the water and I saw something. A head was slowly emerging from the water, but something wasn't normal about that head. The pale moonlight from the broken window helped me see in the dark. Instead of hair, the head began with a chin, followed by a pair of dry lips. It took me a few more seconds to realize the actual horror. The head was upside down. The pair of lips started singing that same nursery rhyme we heard moments back. Just a chin and a pair of lips, peeking from the water, singing.
Ba, ba, black sheep, have you any wool? Yes, sir, 3 bags full.
I lost my balance and sat down on the dusty floor. All the blood in my veins froze. I couldn't believe what I was seeing.
1 for the master, 1 for the dame, and 1 for the little boy who lives down the lane.
The singing stopped. The inverted head remained still. Too swollen, rotten hands grabbed the edge of the jacuzzi. Slowly, the hand started pushing the edge, making the face lift. And that's when I saw the eyes. They had no pupils except a flushed eyeball that looked infected. I couldn't stand it anymore. A scream came out of my numb throat.
Ah!
I got up to run. I heard Marcus's voice calling from behind. Jimmy, stop. Don't leave me here. The more I ran to the exit, Marcus's voice got distorted.
Oh, Jimmy! Come back for your friend. Don't be scared. We were just having fun.
But nothing could make me go back to that sauna. It's been 15 years now. Marcus's body was never found. His parents blamed me. The village people think I killed him and got rid of the evidence. Every night I wake up drenched in sweat, seeing that inverted head smiling at me from that dark, murky water.
I think we all have in common that, even if only for a moment, we enjoy activities that give us peace and relaxation. I am a person who works a lot and has almost no rest, but when my vacations come, I just want to be relaxed. That vacation, I went with my family to the beach and we spent the night in a paradisiacal hotel near the beach. The next day, my husband took our children to see a soccer game. I could have gone with them, but he insisted that I stay at the hotel and enjoy some alone time in the sauna. I thought it was an excellent idea, so I thanked him and agreed. After my family had left, I put on my towels and headed for the sauna area. I had never been in one before, but I had always wanted to. Upon entering the sauna, I must admit that it was everything I had imagined. The warmth began to permeate the room, and I laid back, relaxed, just enjoying the heat and almost falling asleep. Everything was going more than perfect until I heard the doors open. Someone else had come in. I didn't mind another girl entering the sauna. I'm not gonna lie, I preferred to be alone, but she also had the right to have a good time, and I had no reason to feel uncomfortable. The problem is that this person was walking very slowly in my direction, and when I had it in front of me and the steam dissipated, I realized it wasn't a woman. The person was a man. As soon as I saw him, even when I was inside a sauna, I got goosebumps. This man's eyes were tiny, so small that it looked like they weren't even there. He had no lips on his mouth, and his nose was so close to his face that it looked like the holes were glued to his face. The man walked with great difficulty in my direction. At that moment, I didn't care how terrifying he was. I wasn't going to let a creep ruin my rest.
Hey, get out of here! This is the women's sauna?
The man ignored me and just kept walking in my direction. It was then I realized that I could be in danger, that this man had not entered the woman's sauna by accident. I stood up and walked towards the exit of the sauna, but with a quick movement, the man came back to the door and stopped it with his hand.
Wait, you can't leave yet.
What? What's wrong with you? Get out of my way!
I tried to push him, but the man didn't flinch, and I must admit that terrified me.
No, you can't leave. You have to help me.
What do you mean?
The heat. I'm too hot. It's too hot here.
Are you crazy? If it's that hot here, just go away. This is a sauna.
No, I can't leave. They'll find out.
What? Is anyone out there?
No, they're inside me. They're in my head. They talk to me all the time. They say I'm a bad boy. They say they have to punish me.
Okay, that's enough.
I tried to get up from the seat, but before I could, he threw himself at me, putting one arm on each side so I couldn't get up. His face was in front of mine. His small, tiny eyes were red. That wasn't sweat. He was crying.
Please, you have to help me. I can't stand the heat anymore. I hate the heat. You have to do something.
At that moment, I was speechless. I didn't know how to help him. I didn't know what to say to him, much less how to escape from that situation. That man may be crying and asking me for help, but I could see how unstable he was. That person could attack me at any moment. I looked at his hands and my face and realized that his fingernails, besides being dirty and broken, were very sharp. His little eyes were darting from side to side and his body was shaking. I had never felt so terrified in my life. While the man was screaming at me for help, all I could think about was my children, my husband. I didn't want to be in that sauna anymore. I wanted to be with them.
Hey, don't ignore me. I'm melting. You have to do something. Help me. If you don't help me right now, I'm gonna melt to death.
His cries were getting more and more desperate. This man was having a breakdown right in front of my eyes, and all I could do was witness it. Crying with him, I could only beg him not to do anything to me, until out of nowhere the man let go of me and fell to the ground limp. I ran to the front door, and as I did so, I heard him whisper something in a very low voice.
Please, guys, stop making fun of me. What have I done to you? Why are you so mean to me?
I ran in towels to the management and told them everything that was happening. I was still panicking even though it made no sense. I felt I was still in danger, and it didn't go away until I hugged my family a while later. The security personnel went to the sauna and found the man. He had just passed out, probably from the nervous breakdown he had just suffered. The man ended up hospitalized in a mental health center. The man suffered from schizophrenia, and his family never took enough interest in him to get it treated, which is more common than you might think. He was convinced that there were people in his head who wanted to kill him, and that day they almost did. I may have feared for my life at the time, and maybe my life was in danger, but today, I can't stop thinking about that poor man, and as I work, I just pray that by getting the help he needs, he'll get better.
I was 8 years old when my parents took me to Disneyland during my summer vacation. I was enthralled to see the place. The rides, the food, the kids going crazy. Everything about it felt like I was in paradise. After enjoying the theme parks, I had all the junk food I could. My mom then pointed at the gift shop, suggesting we buy some souvenirs. Everything they picked up was simple little trinkets, little keychains, fridge magnets, and other little pieces. I wasn't having any of it. It wasn't enough to encapsulate my feelings for the trip. After buying enough souvenirs, I rushed to take pictures with the Disney characters. My dad went on clicking as I posed with them. My eyes kept searching for Mickey, who I couldn't see at all. But then I finally spotted him. He was sitting on the bench ignoring everyone. I walked up to him, but he didn't seem to care.
Hey, Mickey, click a picture with me.
Not now, kid.
Why? I came all this way to meet you.
Just get lost, you piece of crap. Oh. Hey, watch your tongue.
Before I knew it, my dad was in a fight with Mickey. I was too young to realize that. The guy dressed as Mickey Mouse was probably having a bad day and wanted some time off. But being a kid, I made it worse for him. The security came rushing and separated him from my dad. He was covered in dirt and his costume was messed up in places. His big Mickey head still stayed on though, which is why I never got to see the man under that costume. Disneyland security insulted him for being unprofessional and behaving badly with me. They apologized to my parents and gave us gifts to take home.
Let's go, Adam. This freak has learned his lesson.
Saying this, my dad grabbed my hand and we started walking away. I turned around only once, and I saw the man in the Mickey Mouse attire standing like a statue and watching me. He just stood there, staring at me with those big Mickey eyes, and then suddenly waved slowly, like a real creepy slow hand movement. I don't know why my stomach dropped when he did that. Something at the back of my head told me I should have just left that guy alone in the first place. We returned home and I simply went back to being a kid at school, sharing memories with other kids, kind of flexing my Disneyland trip to them. It wasn't until a few weeks later, weird things started to happen. One day, I was playing in the schoolyard. I was writing my name on the dirt with a stick when my eyes noticed a tree far off in the distance. A thin black arm with a huge-sized white glove was waving at me from behind it. The immediate goosebumps made me shiver.
Adam!
I turned around hearing my friend's voice, but when I looked back, which was in a fraction of a second, the hand was gone. I came to the rationalization that I imagined it. However, things took a dark turn really quick. One night, I woke up feeling thirsty. My room has a big glass window facing the woods. I was drinking from my water bottle when I saw two black dome-shaped ears in the top half of big white eyes staring at me from outside my window. I rubbed my eyes and they were gone the very next moment. I got up to check if anyone was out there. It was silent, except for the tall trees. I didn't see anyone.
Mom! Dad!
I started screaming, hiding my sobbing face in my palm. My parents rushed to my room and I told them that the angry Mickey Mouse from Disneyland had followed me home.
He was right here, Dad! He jumped on me! I saw him at school too! He was right here!
Honey, there's no one in your room. It was a nightmare. Come, let me tuck you to sleep.
From then on, I was actively scared of anything Disney. Other kids would have their Disney toys, and I would shy away. They would bring up the Disney movie they saw the night before, and I would try to turn the conversation to another topic. I got rid of anything I had that was remotely Disney, anything to ease my mind, and erase the trauma I had experienced. It never worked, but it helped. I was in junior high when my best friend decided to organize a Disney trip and asked me to join. I tried to deny the invitation, but he was my best friend and wouldn't take no for an answer. So there I was at Disneyland again, after 8 long years. It was odd, but every time I walked past a mascot, I swear they would briefly drop what they were doing, whether they were promoting merchandise or talking to a kid, and just stare at me as I passed. They just turned their heads slowly, their novelty-sized eyes glaring at me, cold and dead. But I never saw Mickey Mouse though. When I came back to the hotel and thought everything was finally over, I had no idea what was waiting for me. I was passed out on my bed after a couple of beers when I heard a slow knock on the door.
Jack? Is that you?
I dragged my tipsy body to the door and opened it thinking it was my friend, but there was no one outside.
What the?
And then I peeked outside to check the long hotel lobby. With my blurry vision, I noticed something in the distance. Something was standing at the end of the lobby.
Jack? Why are you...
But I couldn't finish what I was saying because now I had figured out it wasn't my friend Jack standing in the lobby. It was Mickey, standing there in his tattered costume. It was just like my dad turned it into during the fight 8 years ago. My jaw dropped. Drops of sweat appeared on my forehead. Mickey was just glaring, unmoving, disturbing, the same way I saw him last in Disneyland. My heart started to race. I was too afraid to look away. He then slowly stretched his arms up like he was silently asking me to hug him. He tilted his head to the left, then to the right. His arms stayed up though. I couldn't take it anymore. I slammed shut the door, locked it from the inside and ran into the bathroom. I spent my entire night wide awake in fear lying in the bathtub. The next day, I boarded a flight home without telling what happened to me last night because I knew no one would believe it. Since then, I haven't seen Mickey, and one thing I'm sure of is that, no matter what, I'm keeping my kids the hell away from Disneyland. The story you just saw is loosely based on this creepy image found on the internet. There's no information about who took this photo, but one can say it's taken at Disneyland, as you can see a guy dressed in a Mickey Mouse costume being the sole subject of this photo. What makes this photo outright creepy is the way the guy in the costume is looking at the camera. Even though he had the Mickey Mouse mask on, the stare is scary enough to give any kids, or probably any adults, a trauma for life.
This is the final boarding call for passengers Aaron and Fred Collins, booked on Flight 372A to Kansas City. Please proceed to Gate 3 immediately. The final checks are being completed, and the captain will order for the doors of...
Hurry up, we're gonna miss the flight.
I'm trying my best, okay?
I told you not to wear those heels.
But you said you like how I walk in them.
He sure does. Mind your own business.
Oh, come on, Fred. The poor man was just complimenting me. I know I'm nice to look at.
Whatever.
Just find our seats. My legs are hurting.
But I haven't done anything yet.
You're getting into the honeymoon mood.
I just can't wait to.
Excuse me, lovebirds. If it's not too much trouble, can I take my seat?
What the hell is your problem, dude?
Right now, you and your fine wife. You sure the luckiest son of a witch. How did even a guy like you...
Hey, you're crossing your limits.
Fred, leave that freak and just sit beside me. Oh, that view is so nice.
Hope you have a nice trip.
I can't believe I have to tolerate this Mr. Fart Breath now.
Just a few hours more, and I'll take you to heaven.
Oh, honey.
I wish it was my behind.
Ah, yuck!
I cannot take this anymore.
Listen, you monkey balls. I'm tired of your crap right now. Just one more freak stunt and I will rip off your chest hair with my shiny nails. Get it?
You look way spicy when you scream like that.
Okay, that's it. I'm calling the attendant.
How may I help you, sir?
We want this man removed from his seat. He's being disrespectful to my wife. This is our honeymoon, and he...
Sorry, sir. There's no empty seat available at the moment. I'm afraid you'll just have to adjust among yourselves.
Looks like you're stuck with me. Knock it off or I'll knock you out, creep!
What's happening, Fred? Are we going to die?
We're not dying in this plane. Not with this freak sitting behind me.
Ladies and gentlemen, we're experiencing some turbulence. Please return to your seats and fasten your seatbelts. Oh, good lord! We finally landed!
Yeah, can't wait to get off this plane.
That man hasn't spoken a word since...
Maybe the turbulence scared him.
Look, he's going to the bathroom.
Perfect. Walk fast so he can't follow us anymore.
I don't see him anywhere.
I don't even want to. Now, can we please stop mentioning that weirdo, Aaron?
Fine.
Wait here. I don't think I can hold it any longer.
That's why I tell you not to stress eat. Don't be too long.
Feeling lighter now?
More than ever.
Ah! Poor Fred. This must have been a hell of a scare. Get lost! Leave me alone! Ah! You shouldn't have done that, Fred! Why are you following me? Because you started it, Fred! You insulted me in front of your wife, and then she did the same too! You may want to look out for her. I have crushed little birdies like her with my lawnmower several times. Now open the door and face me like a man. Come out, come out! If you don't go away right now, my wife will bring the securities. You'll be arrested for harassing me. You know what I'm gonna do once you come out? I'll chop off your cherries. No! Aaron! Somebody! Please help me! Help! Make it stop! You can't hide now! Open it! Open it!
Somebody, please help me. Please stop. Make it stop.
Fred! Fred! Wake up! Are you all right? Ma'am, you can't go in. But that's my husband! We just came here for our honeymoon! Doctor, he just had a panic attack. His wife said they were on his honeymoon.
Hello, Fred! Are you enjoying your trip?
What? No. No. No!
This story was submitted by a viewer who claims that he and his wife was harassed by a creepy man while they were traveling from Las Vegas to Kansas City. The viewer also alleges that man followed him to the Kansas airport's washroom and harassed him. Later, it was understood that man was Dr. and was suffering from schizophrenia.
I grew up in a small suburb. We lived in a quiet apartment on the 3rd floor. Above us lived Mr. Huntz. He was a middle-aged man who never talked to anyone in the building. Kids in the building stayed away from him. Every morning, he would come down to the sidewalks and water the grass. Yes, just freaking water the grass on the side of the road.
What's his deal, man? He's just crazy.
Every time my best friend Charlie came to my house, he would ask this same question. Everyone was curious about Mr. Huntz, but no one dared to go near him. One night, Charlie came to my house for a sleepover. We watched a basketball game that night and then went to bed.
Did he have a wife?
What?
A wife? A girlfriend? Family? Did he ever have any?
Who are you talking about?
Your freak neighbor upstairs!
Dude, just shut up and let me sleep.
Fine, I'll go check myself.
Saying this, Charlie got up and left the apartment in his pajamas.
Hate that moron.
I followed him. My parents were sleeping, so I had to be quiet while locking the door from the outside. Charlie was heading upstairs. I saw a glimpse of his body.
Charlie! Charlie! Charlie, stop!
He didn't. When I reached upstairs, I saw Charlie standing outside of Mr. Hunt's apartment. His right hand was on the doorbell.
Charlie, what the frack? Stop! Cut it! Be ready to run, okay? Oh, man. Run, run, run!
We stormed off the stairs like our lives depended on it. The moment we reached the door, I heard Mr. Hunt's coming out of his apartment.
Who's there?
Open the door, dude. He might come down.
I heard Charlie's voice break into a panic. I was sweating too, and then I remembered. I didn't take my key. My legs started shaking as I heard footsteps coming closer.
Hurry up! What are you doing, man? The freak's gonna bury us alive! I don't have a key! What?
I know you're down here. You can't hide from me.
Oh my god! Run!
We started running again. We ran straight to the ground floor.
Once we made it out to the streets, it'll be all over. Yeah, now you want this to be over? This is all your fault, Charlie.
I was looking behind and could hear Mr. Hunt's footsteps getting louder and closer.
There! The exit!
Charlie ran to the door and slammed hard on it.
It's locked! Bloody hell!
The footsteps weren't far.
Ready or not, here I come.
Just then, the door opened from the outside and one of the tenants walked in. She started asking us what we were doing here so late. The more she kept talking to us, the more I heard Mr. Hunt's footsteps fade. When we made it back to our apartment, our parents taught us a lesson. Charlie and I were both grounded. I didn't go to school the next day. Around the afternoon, I was lying on my bed when I saw Charlie entering my room from the window.
Dude, how did you...
Cut it. I found dirt on your neighbor.
What? I can't believe you're still going on with this. We both got grounded because you went on your ding-dong ditch adventure.
Fine, I'll leave. But do you know he killed his wife and no one ever found the body?
Shut up. That's not true.
Look, it was in the newspaper. I looked for it in the archives.
Charlie showed me a picture of a newspaper clipping. It was the mugshot of Mr. Huntsman with the title, Missing Person Investigation Turns into a Mystery.
They found pieces of evidence of his wife being home before the day she disappeared. Maybe he still has her in his apartment. I mean, he must have hidden her there, somewhere so odd and simple where no one will look. Okay, I don't like the sound of your voice right now. Where are you going with this anyway? We need to get inside his apartment.
What? No way! No freaking way, Charlie!
Our quarrels went on for some time, and then Charlie and I sat down to make a plan. Mr. Hunt's left the apartment for 2 hours every Saturday night. He would go out and buy his groceries. We waited for the right time. Once we saw him on the streets from my window, we set out. My parents were out that night, and the babysitter was busy talking to her boyfriend over the phone, so she didn't notice.
Where did you learn to do that? YouTube. Now follow me.
We made our way into his apartment. Charlie started sniffing the air. He probably expected the apartment to reek of rotten meat, but there wasn't anything as such. The big living room leads to a bedroom on the right and the kitchen on the left.
Where do you think he'll hide it? Maybe in his freezer.
We checked the freezer and found dead butterflies pinned to cardboard stacked inside. There were jars of maggots stored too.
Okay, that's it. Time to go back, Charlie. Enough is enough.
Fine. Let's go back.
We locked the door and left his apartment before our lives got in danger. I was standing on the sidewalks with Charlie. He had a defeated face but decided to stop this madness forever.
Hey, isn't the grass a little thick here?
I looked down following his eyes and realized he was right. We looked at each other with a horrified face.
Why does he only water this side of the grass?
As a loss prevention officer at Walmart, most of our job entails watching security footage for potential shoplifters and confronting any suspicious individuals. Occasionally, I act as security when customers become disorderly. Bigger problems are handled by the police. I'm used to being threatened, but most of those threats are dead in the water as soon as they land. At 6'4" and 275 pounds, I'm not the kind of person who's easily intimidated. But, at the same time, I'm not embarrassed to talk about the times when I genuinely thought my life was in danger. Such a case occurred quite recently. It was peak hours, and I was monitoring things in person at the storefront, taking a break from staring at the security footage and making my presence known to all the customers at checkout, so they would be less inclined to steal. However, the man that ended up becoming a problem wasn't trying to shoplift at all, or at least, that's how it seemed. I spotted him over the heads of the crowd of people and made note of him due to the angry expression on his face. He was wearing a wide-brimmed hat and had a long beard with partially gray hair, and he was dressed sort of like a biker. I could tell that he was getting impatient with the line at checkout, and judging by his demeanor, I had a feeling he might get nasty. Fast forward a few minutes and he's trying to pay for his cart full of groceries, but his card declines. I could hear him shouting at the cashier over the sound of everything else happening in the store, so I started making my way over to him. As soon as I got there, however, he was already storming off to the ATM to attempt to withdraw cash. I figured he didn't want to be talked to, and hopefully he wouldn't need an intervention from me, so I let him be for the moment and helped the bagger load his unpaid-for groceries into his cart so the cashier could continue working through the line. I stayed in the area to make sure things went alright, and of course, about a minute later, the man from earlier was having problems withdrawing cash to pay for his groceries. I had to shake my head in secondhand embarrassment for him. Clearly, anyone in their right mind would know that if their debit card was declined for having insufficient funds to make a payment, then they wouldn't be able to withdraw that amount of money in cash from their debit account. Unfortunately, I didn't have a lot of time to laugh at his stupidity, as he quickly got violent and started beating on the machine, punching it and kicking it and trying to push it over.
You useless goddamn thing! Give me my money! Ah!
I approached him with caution and confronted him in a calm tone of voice. "Sir, please stop damaging the machine."
Get away from me before I damage you!
"I want to help you with your problem, but you have to be reasonable for me to do that."
Why should I have to be reasonable when this worthless piece of crap keeps lying to me about my money? I know I have $300 in this account, so why does it say I only have 10?
"I'm sorry, sir, but that's an issue you'll have to take up with your bank."
Shut up! I know you scum-sucking crooks are trying to scam me! Just give me my money!
At that point, the man was no longer capable of holding a coherent conversation and was more interested in beating up the innocent ATM, which he went straight back to doing. He had already created a huge scene and a major disruption to the flow of business, so I knew it was time to get him to leave the premises. I was just hoping he would cooperate, and the police wouldn't have to get involved. I could see in this guy's eyes that a couple of screws were loose, whether it was from substance abuse or mental illness or whatever else. He was clearly capable of hurting people in his current state of mind, so I got stern and met him man to man. "Sir, you've got two choices right now. Calm down or leave." I knew he heard me, but he finished wailing on the machine for a few more punches before he stopped to look at me.
Don't tell me to calm down again unless you want a face full of my fist!
"Then you've decided to leave. Allow me to escort you off the premises, or I'll be forced to get the police involved."
You pretentious little rent-a-cop! You're enjoying this, aren't you?
Buddy, you had better just walk out that door already. If I have to tell you again, the cops will be on their way.
Fine! Just shut up! I'm leaving! Are you happy now?
Finally, the man left the ATM alone and pushed past me, headed for the door, still steaming mad. I followed him at a reasonable distance to make sure he didn't try to pull anything, as I very much expected him to do. Just as I suspected, right as he was passing through the first set of sliding glass doors at the exit, he suddenly punched the glass with all his strength, cracking the whole pane.
Ugh!
I started hustling to close the gap between us, as he'd forced my hand into getting him arrested.
Sir, that's gonna cost you!
But as I was just getting close enough to stop him, he turned around and pointed a firearm straight at my face.
Back off! I'm leaving and you're not going to stop me! You hear that? Everybody better leave me alone or you're all gonna get it!
Fine, just leave without hurting anyone.
If I was gonna hurt anyone here, you'd be the first, loser.
He pointed it at me again and I froze. I held my composure for several seconds, which seemed to go on forever. Finally, he lowered it and stormed out the door. Everyone in the store breathed a sigh of relief. I called the cops immediately and gave them the man's description. Thankfully, they were able to find him within a few days and give him the justice he deserved. Lastly, I don't even know if this is a good thing, but we also found out that the weapon he used to threaten me wasn't even real. All it fired were little pieces of plastic. The first-hand experience you witnessed in this story is based on the detailed account of a loss prevention officer who was working at a Walmart in Camillus, New York, when a man began causing a disruption by violently beating on an ATM at the storefront. The loss prevention officer, along with the other employees of the Walmart, asked the offending man to stop, and when he refused to cooperate, he was escorted from the store. While walking through the doors, the man once again displayed violent aggression by striking the glass at the entrance. He was then approached once more by the loss prevention officer, who asked him to stop. This is when the man apparently had enough, as he suddenly pulled a weapon on the officer and threatened his life. At the time, the pistol this man was wielding was considered real, to err on the side of caution. After this final threat, the man finally left the store and was not followed. However, based on the security footage provided by the store and the details contributed to police efforts by the Walmart employees, he was tracked down the very same week and arrested. The man has been identified as 44-year-old Adam Shatler, who has since been charged with second-degree menacing, third-degree reckless assault, and fourth-degree criminal possession of a weapon, according to the Camillus Police Department.
In college, I started working as a bike rider for Uber around the town. I would drop off young students like myself at an affordable fare. It was a new thing at that time. My busiest time was helping my friends sneak out for parties in the middle of the night. Friends who had wealthy parents paid a lot. Sometimes they would invite me to the party as a friendly gesture. I had this one friend called Aston who got caught throwing parties in his parents' absence. So, the next time Aston's parents went for a trip, they sent Aston to stay with his grandparents, who lived on the outskirts. On a Saturday night, Aston rebooked me to pick him up from his grandparents' house. He texted me the address in detail and told me to be there around 11:30. I agreed. It was late November. I finished my dinner and was headed for the address. The house was pretty far, and the way to reach it could have been better. The road was terrible, with so many bumps. There was no streetlight throughout the entire drive. I had to rely on the light of my bike. I remember Aston mentioning a turn for a shortcut. The cold air was poking straight into my lungs even after all the layers of clothing. I drove for 15 minutes but couldn't find the turn. Slowly, I began to realize that I was lost. Eventually, when I hit a dead end near an old house, my realization became a fact. I stopped the bike and called Aston.
Where are you, dude? I think I'm lost, man. The GPS needs to be fixed here. You gotta guide me. Where are you now? Can you tell me a landmark? There's an old house on the side of the road. You missed the turn back. Take a U-turn and then take the first right. I'll be on the call with you.
I went to make a U-turn when I saw something on my left. It appeared to be a shadow in the front yard of that old house. I had no clue someone was standing there and watching me. The shadow was very close to the road.
Oh shit, some guy's standing in his front yard looking at me. Probably wondering why the hell I'm just sitting here at the stop sign.
The app showed that I had been stopped at the stop sign for about 5 minutes, so I could imagine I seemed sketchy. I began to turn my bike left. My headlights illuminated the shadow's end. My headlights revealed an old lady standing there with her hands folded, as if she was praying. She looked up at the sky, and her mouth moved quickly. I couldn't make out anything she was saying at all. All I heard was her creepy, hurried whisper. Her mouth was just moving 100 miles an hour. She seemed like she was in a trance. She was 5 feet from my bike. I sat there and stared. It was probably 10 degrees outside, and she was wearing a white dress. My headlights were directly on her, and she didn't even look at me. I didn't know what to do precisely. At first, I was concerned for the old lady, but the more she stood there, the creepier everything started. Aston realized I hadn't said anything for a few minutes.
Dude, you still there? Yeah, this old lady is just standing here. What is she doing? She's just praying right by the road. What the hell? It's past midnight. Is she okay? I think so. I don't know. I really don't want to ask.
She started moving her upper body back and forth like she was possessed. I was scared to move ahead, thinking she would run in front of my bike. As I slowly drove by, having her inches away from me, my heartbeat slowed. She still didn't budge. Her mouth never stopped mumbling.
Wait, is this the house with the red door?
That's when I first noticed the dim lighthouse porch. Yes, the house had a red door which looked odd.
Yeah, I've never seen any house like this. Just get the hell out of there, man. The woman who lived in that house hung herself in the attic a week ago.
My stomach dropped, and I quickly looked at the lady, but she wasn't there. I began sweating in fear. I clearly remembered seeing her a few seconds ago. Where did she go then? I felt the back seat being pushed down like somebody had just sat on the bike behind me. Two pale, skinny hands slowly wrapped around my waist. I never felt this cold before. The hands were freezing like ice. My trembling face moved slowly. I looked at the side mirror attached to the bike handle. And then, all of a sudden, her head tilted to the side, making a breaking noise. And I saw the bone inside her neck pierce out from the corner. And then she disappeared into thin air. Ah! I stomped on the gas pedal. I drove about 80 until I got close to town. When I arrived at Aston's, I told him everything I saw. We were both in disbelief. Aston didn't go to the party that night. He let me crash at his grandparents' place, and I caught a high fever that night. I kept having bad dreams for a week after that incident. Now I take a different way to Aston's grandma's if I go there at night. Remember, don't stop for the old lady if you guys stumble upon the same neighborhood. The story you just saw is loosely based on this footage running around the internet. In the footage you can see a guy driving through a remote location in the middle of the night. The man was completely relaxed and seemed to be enjoying his late night ride when he spots something beside the road. He passes too quickly, but if you look carefully at the footage, you can see a woman wearing a white dress standing on the side of the road. Once the man notices this suspicious woman standing alone in the middle of the night, he doesn't hesitate to slow down at first, but as he gets closer to her, you can see him suddenly pick up speed and move past her quickly. Lucky that he didn't stop that night. There's no follow-up on the footage on whether that woman was a demonic spirit or a crazy woman with some scary intentions. What do you think?
I was coming down the stairs after tucking my traumatized daughter into bed. The apartment looked much better now. It was a mess when I got here from the grocery store. The furniture was scattered. Everything on the dining table was lying on the floor broken. I knew something was wrong when I found my door unlocked. I had to lie to my 5-year-old daughter that it was all an earthquake. What else could I have told her? That it was her own father? My husband Alan and I were pleased at the beginning. He created this TikTok channel where we shared our lives with thousands of people. Alan had a massive knack for acting and often impersonated Al Pacino from Scarface. I always wondered why he loved that movie so much. Because it was violent, or because it was about a man who wanted to write his own fate?
You wanna mess with me? Okay. You wanna play rough? Okay. Say hello to my little friend!
His fans loved him. We even uploaded funny videos of us together. Our fans admired us, saying we were the perfect couple, but suddenly, it all changed. Alan became unreasonably suspicious. His crazy fits began with jealousy. Any guy who would casually talk to me will become a threat to Alan. I tried to make him feel secure, but his madness grew daily. There came a point when he started getting drunk and shouting at me. He would curse and spit on me in anger. Soon, the verbal abuses turned to punches, slaps, even kicks to the stomach. So one day, I left the house, taking my daughter with me. I took the help of the law and got a restraining order against Alan. He laid low for a few days, and then...
Open the door, Hannah! Julia's my daughter, too! You can't keep me away for long!
Go away from our lives! You've tortured me enough! What's wrong with Daddy? Nothing, darling. He's just not feeling fine lately.
Open the damn door!
I could barely sleep that night. I kept having these horrible dreams of Alan holding a bloody knife on my bed. I woke up screaming many nights in my bed, praying to God to put an end to all of this. The other day, I was talking to the neighbor's son on my way home. I had this feeling that someone was following me, but every time I looked back, I didn't see anyone. When I was about to get inside the building, I heard a coarse voice.
Who was that guy, Hannah?
Yes, it was Alan. Again. I looked at him with anger and yelled.
Were you following me?
You didn't answer my question, Hannah. Who was that guy?
I should have reported you to the cops right then. You should be in an asylum.
I turned to leave when Alan grasped my ponytail and pulled me closer to him.
Stop it! You're hurting me!
I get it, Hannah. You're just mad because I didn't kiss you every day, right? I didn't show enough love. But I'm changed now. I want you back, Hannah. Please, let's just go home, okay? Everything will be...
Let me go, you freak!
I poked him in the eye with my apartment keys and he let go of me.
Ah! Don't you dare come near me or my daughter again! There's no way I'm raising her under the same roof as a psychopath like you!
I ran into the building and closed the door immediately. As I stormed upstairs, ignoring the elevator, I heard Alan scream from the sidewalk.
I love you, Hannah! You're just mad! You could never leave me! We're the perfect couple! Everyone says that in our TikTok videos!
After that incident, I went to the cops, who gave him a final warning. Maybe that's why he charged into my apartment in my absence and vandalized my home. I heard a knock on the door when I was thinking about what to do next.
Who is it?
It's me, Roger. Open the door, Hannah. I opened the door and Roger was standing on the other side. He looked concerned. I couldn't hold my tears anymore.
Oh, Roger!
Was he here again?
Yes?
You need to change the lock, Hannah. Roger got me inside and we sat down on the couch. Roger is the only friend who's well aware of my situation. Where's Julia?
In her room, asleep.
I told you repeatedly to file a case against him, but you didn't. He could have been behind bars now, and you all will be safe.
I'm so tired, Roger.
Well, to me, you look beautiful as always. His sudden attempt to make me smile worked, though.
Stop it. I know you're a good friend, but you suck at lying.
We shared a laugh and my heart became a little less heavy. Roger kept talking about going to trip with friends. I too could use a little escape. We were discussing all of that when suddenly I heard the main door click open. Roger and I quickly shifted our gaze to the other, and Alan...
Finally! So this is your new boyfriend, Hannah? You left me for this guy? Alan, you need to leave, man!
Go away before I call the cops!
But Alan let out a creepy smile, and I saw him taking out something from his jacket. Fear increased my heartbeat, and...
Oh my God! Alan! What are you doing? No! Alan, please! Please, stop! Think about Julia. She will never forgive you. Please! Don't do this!
The story you just saw based on the horrifying murder of Anna Abulabon and Rayburn Barron. The man responsible for their death was none other than TikTok personality Ali Abulabon, known as @JinKid. Ali was arrested for the double murder of his wife Anna and her male companion Barron in their San Diego apartment at 3:10 p.m. October 21st. According to preliminary hearing testimony, the fallout of the Abulabons' marriage was precipitated by incidents of domestic violence and indications that Abulabon had been cheating on his wife with other women. After alleged marital troubles, Anna took the decision of ending their marriage and asked Ali to leave their home. Though it was agreed that Abulabon would move out of their apartment, prosecutors allege he secretly made a copy of the apartment key. Ali later told investigators that while his wife was away on the morning of October 21st, he used the copied key to enter the apartment, vandalized the unit, then installed an app on his daughter's iPad that allowed him to monitor live audio inside the apartment. While listening to the app later that day, he overheard his wife and a man giggling. Ali then went to the apartment with a loaded gun and shot Barron 3 times, in the neck, cheek, and back of the head at close range, and also fired 1 bullet into his wife's forehead. Abulaban was stopped on the highway an hour later after he picked up his daughter from school and was arrested for the murders. During his trial, Ali Abulaban snapped out and his inner demons showed him as the deranged psychopath that he was.
And that led to another outburst.
You think I wanted this? Or I wanted this? Who the you?
Mr. Bulb, Mr. Bulban, I need you to stop.
My life is destroyed!
Mr. Bulban, I need you to stop.
I was 12, and my family had moved to the house where my mother had grown up. Across from our house was an old church, and through one of the side windows, I saw it, a clown. Now, when I say clown, I don't mean some weird dude dressed up hiding out somewhere waiting to scare any passerby. No, it was one of those animatronic ones people put out around Halloween. I couldn't make out any of its features, being far from my window, but from where I was standing, I could tell it was fake. My mom saw what I was looking at as we both stood next to the car parked in our driveway.
You know, when I was a little girl, that was the church I went to with Grandma and Grandpa.
She said,
Why is that clown in there?
Who knows? Probably just forgot it there after Halloween.
When I got home from school the next day, I was alone at the time. Mom wasn't back from work yet. I was about to let myself in when I looked back over at the church. The clown was still there, but it wasn't where it had been the day before. It was standing in front of the middle window now. It had moved. I walked across the street and got a better look at the clown. It was about average height, with a rainbow-styled suit alternating red and white stripes that shined like silk in the daylight. It wore a white bow around its neck, with 3 large red pom-poms in front with massive red ruby shoes covering its feet. Its face and hands were gray and looked like they had been fashioned out of modeling clay, with bumps and wrinkles all over. Its scraggly red hair exploded out of the back of its head except where it was bald on the top, and it had a piercing stare to its jaundiced yellow eyes, like it looked right into my soul. It stared and smiled with its mouth full of square teeth. It wore a cardboard sign on its chest with words that looked like they had been written in red marker. The words said, "Hug me." A single thought went through my mind at that moment. Why the hell would anybody leave this in a church? The next day, while I was waiting for the bus to pick me up, I stole a glance over at the church. The clown had moved again. This time, it was in the window closest to the church's front door. The next few days passed without any extra excitement. School went by quick. It wasn't until Friday after school that I noticed something was different again. I had gotten off the bus when I did what now had become routine for me. I looked over at the church and saw the clown, still in the same window. But even from the edge of my driveway, I could tell something had changed. I cautiously walked over, and as I got closer, the differences stood out even more. It looked a foot taller, maybe more so. Its once normal legs now looked like long stilts. Its arms and fingers looked like they'd grown with its wrist, and knuckles bent at odd angles, now pointed at the window. But its face was the worst part. Its eyes looked wider and its teeth looked more knife-like and pronounced. My subconscious brain was picking up all of it. It looked meaner. A shiver ran down my spine as I turned with haste to make my way back home. Never looking back once, I decided to stay up that night and watch the church, watch the clown. I wanted to see if it was moved by someone. I had to catch that person in the act. I faked going to bed and sat down quietly by my window. Even in the dim lighting of the night, I could still make out the shape of the clown. I don't know what time I had fallen asleep, nor did I remember laying down on the floor up against my bedroom wall. I woke up slowly with my head in a semi-daze, and I instinctively peered out the window. It took me a few moments to focus, but then I saw something that immediately sent me into panic mode. The front door of the church was open, and the clown was nowhere to be seen. I went to get up and I heard a noise that sounded like stairs creaking. The steps that lead to our upstairs did creak, albeit not enough to wake someone up if they knew where to step. My first thought was maybe my mom had stayed late and was finally making her way up. I hadn't checked the actual time yet. Then I heard it again and again. Someone was coming up the stairs. Not Mom, not Dad. Then who was it? Suddenly, the footsteps stopped. I sat. A few silent seconds passed. What is he doing? Soon I could make out another distinct sound. The doorknob to my room was being turned. I sat there on the floor, my gaze now focused and eyes better adapted to the darkness. I could clearly see the knob being turned and my bedroom door being inched open. My heart skipped a beat. Someone's trying to get inside my room. I screamed.
Who's there?
Whoever was on the other side of the door stopped. Pin drop silence. I turned my head towards the church. I must have fainted. When I woke up, my mom was on my side. She asked me if I had a bad dream last night. I didn't tell her anything because who would believe me? After that night, I never saw the clown again. The creepy animatronic was also gone the next morning. No one knows who moved it, but something at the back of my head keeps telling me the animatronic had become alive. Beware of finding it hanging outside your window tonight.
I've never been a big fan of water, but I've always thought that water parks and pools were okay. Going to a pool was even fun sometimes. So, when a water park opened in my town, I resolved to go. Purchasing a ticket online, I loaded into my car wearing a skimpy swimsuit and my favorite floaties. I was so excited for the day. Little did I know that would be the last time I ever felt excited while visiting a water park. When I arrived at the park, everything went well at first. I presented my ticket to the admission and quickly found my way into the park. I got on the first ride, my favorite, the lazy river. I hopped into my tube and started to drift along the river, enjoying the sun and the cool water. Relaxing, I slid my sunglasses over my face and closed my eyes for a while, waiting as the river bounced me slowly in a circle. It was probably because the park had just opened up, but not too many people were in the park yet. I had attached a bag holding my phone, keys, and other core items to the tube, so I didn't have to worry about holding it or the phone getting wet. Suddenly, however, I felt my tube come to a halt. Irritated, I opened my eyes and recoiled. A man stood above me, his hands on my tube and his eyes staring at me. His slicked back hair drew my attention to his horrifically large eyes, his small mouth and his strange ears. His body was voluptuous and his skin was mottled. Hello.
Hi. Could you let go of my tube? I'm trying to relax.
I like you. His voice was weird, and I could only come to the conclusion that there was something wrong with him mentally. Because of this, I tried to calm myself down and instead gently instructed him to let go.
That's very sweet of you. Could you please let go?
I like you. He let go, however, and I drifted down the river again. I shuddered looking back at him, his head swiveling as I drifted around the corner and a glint of anger in his eyes. I was so bothered by this experience that I felt like I needed a rush of adrenaline, so I headed over to the more intense slides. As I walked around, however, I noticed that this strange man seemed to follow me everywhere I went. He was always close enough that he felt intrusive, but far away enough that no one else noticed him. I started to get scared, so I decided to head out of the park. I walked out of the gates and then turned around. I saw him with his back toward me, walking back into the depths of the park. I grimaced and walked back to my car, taking the bag that I had put my phone and keys into. When I reached my car, however, I realized that there was something missing from my bag. My keys were there, but my phone was gone. With a sinking feeling in my stomach, I realized that this strange man had probably taken it when I was in the lazy river. I was unlocked, too, and I hurriedly headed back to the lost and found section, hoping that it would be there. To my shock, it was. I thanked the guard, hurried back to my car, and drove off. Maybe that weird man hadn't taken my phone and it had just fallen out? I reached my house and hopped out of my car as the sun was setting. I was about to walk toward my house when I saw a hulking figure several blocks away, standing still and looking in my direction. It was him. He had followed me home. I screamed and ran inside, locking all the doors as I frantically dialed the police. When I hit the call button, however, my phone screen flickered and it went off. I desperately tried to turn it on, but to no avail. I felt a shadow pass over my room, and I whirled toward my window. There he was, not an inch from the sill. He smiled and said something I could barely hear from inside my house. "You like what I did to your phone?"
Get away from me! Go away!
"But I want to be with you. You're cute." He laughed and walked away from the window right to my door. I could hear a thud as he collided with the door, making it shake. I screamed and could feel my heart pounding in fear. I recoiled, backing up against the wall as I saw my door begin to grow loose on its frame. I knew that it was only a matter of seconds before the massive man managed to break down my door, and I didn't want to think about what he was going to do to me when he did.
Please, please, just stay away!
"I'm almost with you. I'm almost inside." His voice grew excited, and I knew he had almost broken through. At that moment, however, I heard the sound of a police car siren from down the street. I heard the pounding on the door stop, and I could hear him cursing. He quickly ran away, and I heard his footsteps fade into the darkness. I ran to the door, threw it open, and ran into the street, waving my arms and yelling at the police officers, who stopped and asked me what was going on. Apparently, one of my neighbors had seen him and called the police. I was relieved but shaken up, so I decided to never return to a water park again. To this day, I'm still scared of going near pools or lakes, as the memory of that horrific water park horror story still lingers in my mind. I don't know what kind of person that was, but I'll never forget the terror he instilled in me. I'm never going to a water park again, and I hope that I never meet someone like him again. Most importantly, however, the police never did manage to catch the man, and so far my description of him had turned up 0 results. It's just scary to think that he's still out there, and he might be watching my house, hidden and waiting.
When I joined Stoneheart Asylum as an apprentice, I was warned by many who were already working there, but having nurses and other workers around, I never felt threatened, except this one time. It was a Sunday morning. I was in my office, working on some urgent files when Dr. Yoshida walked in. I stood up in respect, but he gestured for me to sit down, saying,
"Michael, I'm leaving for an important conference tomorrow. Meanwhile, a new patient will be boarding with us. Do you think you can handle his admission and the entire procedure?" "Of course I can, Doctor." "Good. Nurse Riley will be with you to help. But before I leave, I need to tell you something about this new patient."
I could see a frown on Dr. Yoshida's face. He looked worried for some reason.
"Is something wrong with this patient, Doctor?" "Don't be ridiculous, Michael. There's always something wrong with them. That's why they're sent here. But this one, this man..."
The hesitation in his voice surprised me. We've been housing mental patients who have been infamous for their violent records. Then what is so new about this one?
"Why? What did he do, Doctor?" "Not much. Just ate his wife because she tasted delicious."
What?
Yeah, that's what he told the cops when they discovered what was left of her in the basement freezer.
Good lord.
Just be careful with this one, okay? And don't be alone with him. Like, ever.
Dr. Yoshida left, giving me goosebumps. I drank water as my throat suddenly felt dry in an unknown fear. Around 4 in the evening, Nurse Riley came to my office.
Michael? He's here.
I could see fear in her eyes. It wasn't hard to guess that this patient's history had successfully managed to set a panic in her as well. We stood in the hallway. The big door slammed open and I saw 4 security guards escorting a man. His hands and legs were shackled with heavy iron chains. He had his face down to the floor and dragged his feet like he was too tired to walk.
I didn't get his name, by the way.
Dagan Bradford.
The man suddenly stopped.
Keep moving, now!
One of the security guards yelled at him, but he just stood there with his head looking down.
Hey, are you deaf? Don't try our—
Mr. Bradford?
Hearing my voice, he looked up. The moment I saw his face, a cold shiver ran down my spine. His eyes gave me the creeps. He smiled ear to ear and asked me a pretty weird question.
Do you like hide and seek?
Sorry?
The game where you all hide and I will seek you. Do you like that?
His voice sounded like a snake. Everything about him was enough to scare people off. But I had to do my job, so I awkwardly smiled back.
Yeah, sure. We'll play someday, Mr. Bradford. Now, please go to your room.
He started walking again, but the smile remained on his face. While walking past me, he moved his head like a happy kid and whispered,
He likes hide and seek. He said he'll play.
The guards took him toward D, and I wiped the sweat off my forehead.
Are you all right, Michael?
Yeah, I'm fine.
I came back to my office and finished the rest of my work. When I finally got off, I set out for my usual round to each ward. A thunderstorm was starting to brew. As I made my way through the long and empty corridors, my heartbeat got faster. The realization of being alone with a building full of mental patients never gave me any ease. To be honest, when I reached Ward D, a huge bolt of lightning struck and the power went out. I always carried a flashlight because this happened often during monsoon season. Generally, the workers take 5 to 10 minutes to turn the power back on, so I didn't think much about it and walked in front of each cell to check on the patients. Each cell door had a small glass in the middle, so we could get a good look inside without having to get close to the patients. Dagan Bradford was kept in cell number 333. I could feel my legs shaking once I reached outside of his cell. At first, I looked inside the glass but didn't see him. So, I flashed the light and his face popped up.
Ah! Did you come to play hide and seek with me?
No, just to check up on you.
Would you mind opening the door, Doctor?
You know I can't do that, Mr. Bradford.
Why not? It'll be so much fun. I swear.
Try to get some sleep, okay? The power will turn on in a minute.
I turned to walk away and immediately got startled by his scream.
Hey! Don't you dare leave me alone! I said open the door!
I understand you.
But he didn't let me finish. He started banging his head on the glass while screaming.
Open the door! Open the door!
He was going crazy. I ran to press the alarm button on the other side of the wall when I heard the glass break followed by a click. With shivering hands, I looked back. The door of cell 333 was half open. I realized the power outage had resulted in the shutdown of the electrical security system. And somehow Dagan figured that out.
Dagon?
Slowly peeked in from the doorway. The sick smile on his face was back.
Do you know which part of the human body doesn't need to be cooked?
What?
It's the eyeballs. They're better whole, and they're always wet and squishy. So they go down the throat easily. Ah! Nurse Riley! Security! Security!
I ran. I never looked back to see if he followed me, but when I reached my office, the power came back. The alarms went off like crazy as one of the cell doors had been broken. I explained everything to the workers, and they immediately ran to check cell 333. But Dagan Bradford was nowhere to be found. I don't know how he managed to escape and where he is right now, but I still wake up screaming in my sleep. His face peeking behind the door visits me in my nightmares. He licks his tongue saying,
The eyeballs, they're wet and go down the throat so easily.
My name is Alex, and besides being a police officer, I'm also a volunteer firefighter. You would think having these two professions I would have many anecdotes to tell, but believe it or not, the worst moment of my life was neither in fire nor in a shooting, but on my honeymoon. Needless to say, we were both very happy. We had spent the first night in a paradisical hotel in Brazil, and although we had to get up early the next day, we decided to spend the night having a few drinks at the hotel bar. Everything was going well. We were having a great time remembering our day at the beaches of Sao Paulo, until something caught my attention. The bartender at the place kept looking at us. No, he wasn't looking at me. He was only looking at Lisa, my wife. He wasn't even trying to dissimulate that he was looking at her. His eyes were frozen on her while he was drawing a cup I don't know how many seconds ago. It was as if there was nothing between them. And the worst of it was that Lisa didn't realize it. She was still innocently talking to me about the food at the hotel. In the middle of my distraction, Lisa innocently called him to ask for another drink, to which he approached. Lisa nonchalantly ordered her drink, but in a matter of seconds, she began to feel more and more uncomfortable. The man was looking at her eyes in a penetrating way. She could hear him breathing violently, more and more agitated.
Hey, does my wife have something on her face? Hey, I'm talking to you. Are you deaf?
At my answer, the man stopped looking at Lisa for the first time, turned his head towards me. In my job, I learned not to feel intimidated and to be able to face these situations. But I have to admit that, even though I didn't show it, I was afraid. After looking at me for a few seconds, the man, without saying a word to me, walked away to prepare the drink.
What was that? Did I say something to him?
No, he's been looking at you like that for a long time now.
I don't want to have that drink. Let's go.
And without further ado, we went back to our room. I wasn't worried about not paying for the drink. We had already talked about the bill coming to our room when we left. We got to our room and I must admit that we had a few too many drinks, so we went to sleep. I woke up with a bolt, the moonlight shining on my face. I looked at the clock and it was only 4 a.m. I usually sleep through the night, especially when I drink alcohol. So what made me wake up so fast? I didn't have to look far for the answer, as he was standing right in front of me, in complete darkness, standing at the end of my bed, where the light coming from the window didn't reach. The silhouette of a person was standing still. I had no trouble identifying them. It was the bartender from before. Like before, he was just standing, but this time he wasn't looking at Lisa, who was sleeping next to me. He was looking at me. I tried to stand up, to attack him and save us from whatever was happening, but I couldn't. It was as if my body was as frozen as his. Every joint in my body was cramped and my hands and face began to sweat. I was terrified, paralyzed with terror. Meanwhile, the bartender was still in front of us. His left hand was holding something, but I couldn't see what it was. Was he going to use it to hurt us? I could also see how his right hand was twitching restlessly. The man was scratching his whole body nervously. I heard a noise next to me and I turned around. Lisa was awake. She couldn't scream either. She was crying. Her eyes were telling me that this could be the last time we would see each other, that we were at the mercy of a person that not only was possibly armed, but that his very presence made us feel like ants in front of him. Seeing Lisa without hope, crying, awakened something within me. I told myself that I'm a cop, that I'm trained to deal with these people, and that I would not allow anyone to do anything to my wife. Even if I was lying down and unarmed, I would defend myself. Filled with courage, I was encouraged to say the first words, breaking the silence in the darkened room.
What are you doing here? What do you want?
In response, the man's gaze became even more piercing and his body began to move in my direction. Everything inside my head was screaming at me to run away, to escape, to defend myself from this man. But I could only strain back a little, ready to defend myself from whatever this man could do to me. Instead of attacking me, the man, without taking his eyes off of me, put a glass on the bedside table next to the bed.
You forgot your drink.
Then the man turned to me and walked towards the exit door. From there, he turned his head one last time and looked me straight in the eyes. Then, he simply walked away. I ran to the door and turned on the electricity. Once the light illuminated the room, Lisa and I just hugged each other crying. A few minutes later, we fearfully went to talk to the hotel authorities. Once we did that, they went to look for the bartender, but he was gone. All his things were there. He just left. The next day, the hotel manager approached us to tell that the man was no longer working with them. They were planning to fire him for his strange behavior, but he had never done anything like that before. From that night on, no one ever saw him again. We left that hotel a few days later and never knew if the man ever came back. Even though we never saw him, his terrifying look will always be in my nightmares. Every time I wake up, I feel that he is there, watching us, getting ready to do whatever it is he didn't dare do that night. I've been driving Uber for about a year now and never really had an incident, except for that one time when a drunk student tried to punch out my backseat window on a Friday night. But we've all been there. But this particular incident is the only reason why I put an end to this job. 12:30 a.m. on a Monday, out here. It doesn't matter what night it is. People are out and about, and you rarely have to wait long for a ride. I was parked near the sidewalk when I got a request. Pick up Pamela, located 0.4 miles away. Let's do this, Pamela. I arrived at the address given, but no one was outside. Not unusual. I began messing with the radio and getting the aux cord set in case Pamela wanted to play some sweet jams. And that's when the rear right door opened. I looked back, and I was confused right away. Pamela was old, like the early 80s at least. Odd to see someone in this demographic this late, but I've had others in the same age range, so I ignored it.
So how's it going tonight, Pamela?
I asked. She didn't answer. She struggles in and shuts the door behind her. I glance in my rearview mirror to study her face. Nothing but blank looks in her eyes, almost as if she just woke up from a coma and can't decipher what's happening around her.
Where are we headed tonight?
Again, no response. Can she even hear me? Does she not speak English? Then my phone beeped. New destination entered. 1700 North Lock Street Avenue. I shrugged my shoulders and started the engine. It's a short car ride, but I thought to try again.
Are you from Los Angeles?
I glanced in the rearview mirror, and she stared at me. Her gaze was sharp enough to pierce my soul. In a deep, shrill voice, she finally spoke.
Why don't you just take me to the address?
Okay, I get it. I'll just drive you to your destination.
We're a ways off from the destination she entered when she spoke again.
Drop me off at the next corner.
I looked up in the rearview mirror, her eyes still on me.
Are you sure? We're still a mile.
Just stop at the next corner!
The way she snapped at me felt a little insulting now. All I tried to do was be polite, but some people don't deserve the good in you, right?
Sure.
I wanted her out of my car, so I was happy to oblige and stop. I pulled off on a quiet corner a few blocks off of Lock Street Avenue. I slightly turned my head to look over my right shoulder, saying,
Have a good...
But as I turned, she was right beside my face, leaned up in between the seats, just inches from me. I froze. I couldn't speak. My scared eyes were stuck onto her pale white eyeballs. I've never encountered such dead eyes before. She started breathing heavily. I could hear the gargle of wind struggling to pass through her throat and lungs. I don't know how long we kept staring at each other like that, but then she tried to listen to something.
Pamela? Is everything all right?
She put her hand on my shoulder. Her touch was ice cold. I was wearing my hoodie, yet still her fingers chilled my bones. Her eyes were completely white now, wide open like her pupils had rolled up in her head. I began fearing for my life now. Before I could say anything, she whispered creepily,
Take the stairs tonight.
I stared back at her.
Sorry, what?
She didn't repeat herself. She just exited my car. I sat there watching her slowly waddle away into a beat-up apartment building and then disappear inside it.
Okay, what the hell just happened?
I was in no position to take rides that night. I turned off the app and drove back to my apartment. When I reached my building, I sat in my car for 10 to 15 minutes, trying to figure out that weird lady and her words before leaving. When I finally calmed down, I stumbled onto the entrance of my 10th floor apartment. I've recently shifted to this apartment for its cheap rent. Being an old building, the landlord needed help to increase the rate. The facility desperately required repair, but the landlord didn't care anymore. I lived on the 6th floor, so I walked up to the elevator. I pressed the button, and slowly, the number plate started to change.
Take the stairs.
Ah!
I jumped, screaming. No one was around. Then who whispered into my ear just now? Did Pamela follow me home? Maybe she's some old psycho woman who stalks her prey. I couldn't wait for the elevator as sweat started to curl up on my forehead. I rushed upstairs and almost crawled like a four-legged animal after a point. I constantly looked back to see if anyone was running behind me, but all I saw was pitch black darkness. When I got to my apartment, I slammed the door behind me and sat on the floor. I was having difficulty breathing. Suddenly, I heard a huge collision, like something had collapsed on the ground. The fire alarm started ringing, and people were screaming. I opened my door and saw other tenants staring at the hall and talking to each other in a panic.
Hey, what happened? The elevator. Looks like it malfunctioned and broke down, crashing straight to the ground floor. What?
My jaw dropped, but everyone thought I was only shocked like them. No one knew the actual reason for my surprise. The landlord was charged for the risky management of the building, and the tenants called the cops, fearing for their lives. Everyone was angry at the landlord for being irresponsible. Only I remained silent. I was just stunned to be alive. When the cops took the landlord away, I overheard two tenants saying,
Remember that once he said he fixed it, but still, Mrs. Miller died? Yeah, dude, the poor lady got smashed. Can't even imagine how horrified she felt when the elevator crashed with her in it.
I asked feebly.
Who are you talking about? Pamela Miller, the woman who lived in your apartment before you. She died in this same elevator, but the landlord somehow managed to get away with it. But not this time. I still visit her grave sometimes. God bless her.
My head was banging. Pamela Miller? I fumbled as I asked the last question.
Where is her grave? Not far. That cemetery on Lock Street Avenue.
I used to work in a boarding house accommodating old and disabled people. The owner of the place was two elderly ladies named Ruth and Dorothea. They were friends and ran the place together. Ruth was a kind old lady who was the actual owner of the place. Dorothea was her business partner and roommate. On the ground floor of the house, 5 rooms were housing 2 people each. Dorothea and Ruth lived on the top floor. I never understood why, even after having an entire floor to themselves, they shared one room. Also, Ruth used to be sick often. After lunch, she would get a high fever, followed by vomiting. My job was to clean the house. One day, I was mopping the floor when I heard Ruth coughing and sitting on the stairs. I ran to her. "Ma'am, are you okay? Do you want me to call a doctor?" "I think I'm getting sick. You need to give me the injection. Dorothea has gone to market. Okay, let me take you to your room and then show me what to do." I wasn't a trained nurse, but I grew up in hospitals. My father was a hospital staff member all his life. So I took Ruth to her bedroom and gave her the injection. I thought she might have some allergic reaction. The room was simple. Ruth's bed was near the sealed window, and Dorothea slept right next to the door. Slowly, Ruth started to feel better. She drank water and thanked me for helping her. Taking that opportunity, I asked, "Why do you two manage in one room when 3 empty ones are sitting on this floor?" I only insisted Dorothea stay with me. Actually, my health isn't good now. I often suffer allergies from time to time. Dorothea gives me all the medication and takes care of me. I frowned a little and checked the bed standing close to her. There were lots of medication and an empty vial. I was memorizing the names so I could find out what they were for when Dorothea walked in. "How dare you come into our room? Don't you know no one is allowed upstairs?" "I'm sorry, Dorothea, but..." Ruth stopped me and explained everything herself. Dorothea didn't say anything, but I could clearly sense her discomfort of having a third person in the room. My suspicion grew stronger when I saw Dorothea hiding a bag under the kitchen sink. She sneaked like a cat in the middle of the night. Her eyes and ears were on alert. She hid the plastic bag and quickly went back upstairs. I came to get water, but remained in the dark and watched her. After a few minutes, I went to the kitchen and checked the bag. I found stacks of cash wrapped in newspapers. Damn, where did she get this money? Is she stealing from Ruth? I was sure Dorothea was not a good woman. She had some dangerous intentions. I kept an eye on her. I saw her giving too many injections to Ruth. Whenever asked, she would say it was for pain relief. Poor Ruth thought she was getting sick due to old age. And then, one day, Ruth got very sick. Dorothea told everyone Ruth died out of old age. No one cared that much, and Dorothea became the new owner of the boarding house. Soon after Ruth's death, Dorothea boarded the second floor to new people. I wanted to leave my job, but I feared leaving these innocent people in her hands. I was positive Dorothea killed Ruth, but due to lack of evidence, she got away. After a few weeks, our boarders started to go missing. There was a man named Charlie. He had autism and was living with us. He was a shy but well-behaved man. He never caused trouble. One day, I saw him asking Dorothea about some money that his family sent him. Dorothea told him, "There were no checks with your name this month." But I saw Dorothea going to the bank with Charlie's check. Oh my God, she's cashing the checks without the boarder's will. That night, I woke up hearing a digging sound at the back of the house. I peeked outside my window and saw Dorothea again. This time, she was burying something in the backyard. Before I could see what it was, Dorothea stopped and turned her face right to me. I will never forget her eyes. She looked like a deranged psycho. Her face formed a slick smile. I could feel my legs shaking. I came back to my bed, locking my door. I was scared Dorothea would visit me in my sleep. The next morning, I went to call Charlie for breakfast, but he was gone. His suitcase, clothes, and books, all gone. Are you looking for something? Where's Charlie? He left to see his family. You let him go on his own? He's a grown man, and I'm not liable to answer you. What do you think? I don't know that you spy on me? I'm sure you steal from my room when I leave the house, you dirty witch. She jumped on me all of a sudden and bit me in the cheek. Some portion of my skin and flesh came out with a pull of her strong, yellow teeth. I groaned in pain and started screaming. My scream set panic all over the house. Hearing the chaos, our next-door neighbor called 911, and from there, the dark truths surfaced. Dorothea was taken to the station and interviewed about her misdemeanor. I told the cops everything I saw, and they decided to search the house. When they didn't find anything inside the house, they started digging in the backyard. Within 5 minutes, the boarding house was all over the news. There had been a discovery of 7 bodies in the backyard. All were murdered and buried with their belongings. I went to see Dorothea before her trial started. She was sitting behind bars, hiding her face in her palm. For a moment, I thought she was being repentant, but as she lifted her face, hearing my footsteps, my blood froze. Hatred was splashing from her eyes. She looked angry as hell. But then, she suddenly smiled and said something that still gives me nightmares. I should have poisoned you two with Ruth that day. The story you just saw is loosely based on America's oldest female serial killer, Dorothea Puente. In April 1982, Puente's friend and business partner, Ruth Monroe, rented a space in an apartment she owned. Shortly after moving in, Monroe died from an overdose of codeine and Tylenol. When Dorothea was questioned by the police, she said that Monroe had depression. Police officially ruled Monroe's death as a suicide due to lack of evidence. After that, Puente took charge of the place. She started housing the elderly, alcoholics, and disabled people. After drugging her victims, she buried them in the backyard of the 2-story Victorian house and then cashed their Social Security checks. Her homicidal spree came to a halt in November 1988 when police came searching for a mentally disabled man named Alvaro Montoya who'd been reported missing. Police eventually dug up 7 bodies around the boarding house property. 2 more bodies were found later, including the remains of Puente's former boyfriend, Everson Gilmouth, who was found in a box that had been dumped in the Sacramento River. Though there were no witnesses to the slayings, Puente was one of the most cold and calculating female serial killers the world has ever seen.
The neighborhood I grew up in was a small, tight-knit community. As kids, we played everything from Foursquare to Manhunt on the street, day and night. Most of the residents were families whose kids were all friends with each other, with only a handful of outliers. The major exception was the neighborhood maniac, a bitter old man named Mr. Thompson. He lived alone in a dingy house right in the middle of the whole block. Nobody knew if he had children or if he had ever been married, just that he was a total recluse who screamed at any kids who came near. For that reason, we sometimes referred to him as Old Man Nevercracker, the crazy hermit from Monster House. The resemblance between them was uncanny. Mr. Thompson was a bald and ancient skeleton of a man with a hunchback and the meanest, scariest face anybody had ever seen. Usually, everybody avoided him the way he avoided us. But in the dog days of summer, when every other game we were playing got boring, we became a little too desperate for entertainment. It started with the big orange tree in his front yard. The whole thing was chock full of perfectly ripe oranges. One day, we all started daring each other to run up and snag one. Mr. Thompson would run outside with the baseball bat and start swinging, but it was worth it. I swear, I never tasted an orange as good as the ones I stole from Mr. Thompson's tree. Within a week, the whole thing was bare. When the fruit was gone, we wanted more thrills. It wasn't long before we got the idea to ding-dong ditch him. First, I watched the older kids from across the street, and I never laughed so hard in my life. Mr. Thompson looked like he was about to burst one of those nasty bulging veins on the top of his head. Then, as we went back inside, another kid ran up and rang the doorbell again, sprinting away just moments before Mr. Thompson opened the door and hurled a tire iron at him. After that close call, they gave it a rest for a few hours, then had someone else do it. At that point, Mr. Thompson was threatening to call the cops, so everyone stopped for the evening. The next day, though, word got around that this was the new fun thing to do, and it started getting out of hand really quickly. By late afternoon, I finally convinced my closest friends to do it. I almost had to drag my friends up to the door because of how nervous they were. Looking back, I should have listened to them.
Hey man, are you sure this is a good idea?
Yes, I'm sure. It's freaking Nevercracker, dude. Don't you want to get back at him?
Yeah, but it's just over a couple footballs, you know? Is it even worth it?
Just wait till you see the look on his face.
I really don't know about this. Can't we try tomorrow? I just feel like it's been done too many times today.
Oh my god, will you please stop being such a chicken? Nothing bad is going to happen to you, alright? So just chill out.
Fine. Let's get this over with.
Now that's the attitude I'm looking for. Come on, let's go.
I'll always remember the way my heart pounded as I crept up to the door. It was such a rush. My friends were an arm's length behind me, just there to get a taste for it. I could feel my pulse in the tip of my finger as I put it on the doorbell. Then I pressed it. It rang from inside. And right in that instant, the door opened. I turned around to run away from Mr. Thompson, but he grabbed me by my shirt and yanked me back, then held on to the base of my neck with a vice grip. All of a sudden, this wasn't funny anymore. Mr. Thompson was at a stage of rage and fury that nobody had ever seen before, and I was about to get the brunt end of it. I was too petrified to look back, but I could feel his stale breath on my ear.
Look at your friends running away. Some good ones you got there, huh?
I'm sorry, Mr. Thompson. I really am. I won't do it again, I swear.
I know you won't. And when I'm done with you, nobody will ever pull a stunt like that again.
What are you gonna do?
Shut up!
Mr. Thompson dragged me by my ear into his house. It was dark and reeked like nothing I'd ever smelled before. There was even a chair in front of the door where he had been waiting for us. As he dragged me along, it became clear that he wasn't just a hermit, but also a hoarder. There was just junk everywhere, and everything was filthy. Finally, he stopped in the kitchen and pulled me up by the throat so he could scream in my face.
I'm sick and tired of you kids and your stupid games. Go ahead and tell your little friends about this and see if any of them want to still play. I said shut up! Look here!
Mr. Thompson forced my head down so I was looking into the kitchen sink. What I saw made me gag. It was full of this disgusting, murky water with bits of old food scraps and spit from his chewing tobacco, and it smelled like it hadn't been drained in weeks.
Don't look too good, do it! How about you get a closer look?
That's when he pushed my head into the water. He held me there as I kicked and punched to try and break free. But this old man that looked so fragile must have still had his strength from his years in the military, because I was powerless. In the struggle, I inhaled and swallowed so much water. After a few seconds, which seemed like eternity, he lifted my head up. I immediately threw up into the sink, just for him to plunge my head back under, straight into it. It was awful. He kept me there until I felt like I was moments from drowning. Then he finally let me go and pushed me away. Somebody was knocking at the door.
That's your savior, you little rat. Now, scram!
I ran for the door, coughing and gagging and crying. When I got outside, my dad was standing right there. My friends had run off and called him for help, and I could see the look in his eyes that said he was halfway between calling the cops and beating Mr. Thompson to a pulp with his bare hands. My mom was close behind. She consoled me and took me home to wash everything off. I remember looking back as my dad entered Mr. Thompson's house for a talk. To this day, I never found out from either of them what happened, but there was a stark difference in Mr. Thompson ever since. It was like he'd been castrated. Of course, this made it easy for the whole neighborhood to reap some vengeance on my behalf.
In early December, I ventured out to do some late-night shopping. I'm a 27-year-old woman who recently shifted to a new address. I'm a freelancer. Once I finish work, I like to go shopping, drive, or go to a friend's house. It was around 9:30 p.m. when I arrived at the Walmart close to my house. I'm not dramatic or have a habit of overthinking, but I'm aware of red flags in strangers and what precautions to take when out in public alone, especially at night. I always carry a couple self-defense items in my bag, a pocket knife and pepper spray. I also keep my car keys in my hand just in case. I parked directly in front of the store, next to a black Chevy, and noted the vehicles parked nearby. Nothing seemed out of the ordinary, and the parking lot was quite empty, most likely because it was a weekday. As I entered the store, I began browsing like usual, following the natural flow of the store departments, following the central aisle around. I had been browsing for only 10 to 15 minutes when I noticed a man, probably in his late 30s. He was average in height but big in size. He was dressed in a dirty yellow two-piece sweatsuit and muddy work boots. His eyes were fixated on the aisle full of Barbie dolls. Suddenly he looked over at me. I didn't want to give him the idea that I was watching him, so I smiled and said,
Hello.
but his face remained blank. I could tell he was high on something by how he stared. Feeling a little creeped out, I walked past him. I left that wing and went to the cleaning supplies. All was fine, until again, I saw that man. He was just wandering down the central aisle with no cart or basket, hands in pockets. He didn't seem to be with anyone either. A cold shiver ran down my spine. Is he following me? I pretended to shop and gradually moved to the other side. The man quickly disappeared behind an aisle. Several minutes had passed and I was grabbing some drinks. I was reading the label of the wine bottle when I felt a warm breath at the back of my neck.
What the frack? What do you think you're doing, huh?
No, this is a misunderstanding. I was only waiting for you to move to check the...
Listen, you creep. Just because I said one hello doesn't mean I'm into you. Leave, or I'll report you to the securities.
His face changed, and he left immediately to avoid trouble. I started sweating in fear now. I can only stay inside Walmart for a while. Worries were crowding my mind when I noticed a second young gentleman wearing the same yellow sweatsuit and similar pair of work boots. Again, he had no cart, no basket. He too glanced at me, and quickly darted his eyes away when he realized I was looking directly at him. Oh my God. Am I being hunted at Walmart? I became more alert but still remained calm. At this point, it was difficult to focus on browsing. I had a bad feeling about these men, and it became clear that something was a bit off. Over the next 20 minutes or so, they monitored me as if they were communicating my whereabouts as I continued my way through the store. In each department I entered, it didn't take long for me to notice one of them pass by while giving me a side eye or peeking at me slowly from corners. With every aisle I popped into, just a few minutes later, one of them would appear, staring me down as they passed by. I felt as if I was being surrounded like a wild animal, hunted even. They were no longer trying to be conspicuous, which was the scariest part of it all. Everything instinctual was screaming at me to get out of there. I gripped my cart tightly and figured if they got too close, I could use the cart to push them away or at least create distance between us. By this point, I had been shopping for about an hour altogether, maybe a bit over, and I was ready to purchase my items. I felt too uncomfortable to continue browsing even if I wanted to. The store was pretty empty around this time, one of the main reasons I like shopping at night, but that made the situation even more unsettling. 2 preteen girls were wandering around by themselves. As I walked past them, something unexpected happened. The 2 men were now following me together, but the moment they saw those teenage girls, they stopped, their eyes fixed on them just as they did while watching those Barbie dolls. They looked back at each other and chuckled creepily. To my shock, they walked in the opposite direction, forgetting entirely about me. I went to the counter to bill myself out and return home ASAP. I was going to the exit when I saw those girls leaving as well. And just then, I saw those two men again. But this time, they were following those girls. I realized these men have now moved to a new target. I couldn't stand still anymore. I immediately ran behind them. The girls were going in the direction of the empty parking lot. One of those men had a spanner on his hand at the back. My stomach dropped and my entire body began to shake. I shouted,
Hey, you two! Stop!
The girls didn't hear me, but those men did. Seeing me running at them at full speed, they got scared. 2 more cars had pulled up by then into the driveway. The men realized there were high chances of getting caught if they stayed here one more second.
Run, run!
A white windowless van was parked in the lot directly behind my car. One of the men jumped in the driver's seat and the other sat beside him, closing the door loudly. They drove away. Whatever their intent, it didn't seem pure. I still reported them to Walmart security. They had the CCTV footage of those men following me. I hope they get caught before they actually end up hurting someone. When you get bored, it's easy to want something or anything to happen, just so life can be a little more exciting. I made that wish once, and it came true. But now I'd rather wish I hadn't. I would much prefer a whole day spent doing nothing over what happened in 2020. Me and my friends were using the Randonautica app, which generates random coordinates in a set area. The whole point is to go there and find out what happens. We set the app to pick locations anywhere in the city of Seattle, but the first pin it put down wasn't far away at all. In fact, as soon as we saw it on the map, we all knew where it was. It was the Alki Beach Pier, which since we lived in the neighborhood right off that beach, we'd all been to it plenty of times. It was close by, and it had always been fun in the past. So we agreed with the app and drove to go check it out. All we were doing was hanging out and getting up to stuff, and we had all day, so we could start with something chill like the pier. It was better than sitting at home, or so we thought. At first glance, everything seemed normal for Alki Beach at the time, although a lot less people were out than usual, but that made it even nicer, honestly. It almost felt like we were the only people there, like everybody was completely turning their backs on this beautiful day and we were the only ones outside appreciating it. But then, not long after we got there, I saw something in the rocks beneath the pier. I pointed out to everyone immediately, not realizing that it was anything more than litter at the time.
Hey guys, look, a suitcase. What? Look. See? What the heck? Who would leave that here? It probably washed up. I mean, who takes their luggage to the beach? Well, who throws their luggage overboard off a ferry? It's probably some hobo's house. Oh my god, be respectful. I was just kidding. Obviously, a person couldn't fit inside of that. It's way too small.
Oh really? I don't know. There could be anything in there. Could be a bunch of mafia money. Or like kilos or bricks or something.
Kilos? Bricks? What are you talking about?
I'm just saying there could be anything in there. Like, what if it's full of diamonds?
Psh, I wouldn't have diamonds in it. That's ridiculous.
We'll never know unless we go down there and open it.
Well, I'm not opening it.
Oh yeah? 1, 2, 3, not it!
Not it, not it. Oh, come on. Fine.
Come on, do it for TikTok.
Yeah, do it for TikTok.
Even then, there was something telling me I shouldn't do it. But with the camera pointed at my face and all my friends looking at me, I felt like I had to. 2 of them climbed down the rocks with me. The boy filming and his little girlfriend who must have also been feeling adventurous that day. The bay almost always has a kind of stink to it. The watery scent of oil and algae and bird poop. As someone who grew up smelling it, I've grown to enjoy it honestly. But there was something else in the air that day. Something nasty and rotten that I was smelling the second I started climbing down.
Come on, hurry up. Give me a second. I don't want to slip.
The tide had just gone out, so all the rocks were freshly wet and slicked, and the suitcase was lodged in the rocks pretty far out there, almost to the end of the pier. I made it eventually, though. Unfortunately, when I got close to it, I knew it was the source of that putrid smell that hit me earlier. Still, the video was waiting for me to make it. All my friends were egging me on to open it. I reached over and pulled the zipper open just a few inches. And then I was immediately smacked in the face by the worst thing I've ever smelled. I gagged immediately and almost fell into the crevices of the rocks.
Oh God, it smells so bad.
Yeah, open it some more.
Just grab a stick or something.
Not wanting to touch it directly with my hands, I looked around and luckily found a nice piece of driftwood to poke it with. Using that, I managed to open the zipper a bit more and started to turn a flap over.
It's just a plastic bag. What do you mean? That's it? Yeah, like a garbage bag.
All of a sudden, the wind shifted and I became completely overpowered by the foul odor emanating from that thing. I couldn't stand it any longer. I threw the stick away and backed down.
I can't. Well, I can't even stomach it. Fine, I'll open it, you wimp.
I was glad I was off the hook. I didn't care if they made fun of me for it later. I didn't say it then, but I also felt something disgusting inside the bag. But since I just poked it with a stick, I had no idea what it was. My friend took my place and pulled the flap open some more. Now it was clear that there was something inside the garbage bag, and together they'd been stuffed into the suitcase. But we still didn't know what. She found another stick and slowly reached over to poke it. I watched her do it, and right as she did, her face turned white as a sheet. She dropped everything. Her mean girl attitude was gone, and now she was just as mortified as me.
What is it?
And just don't touch it. We shouldn't have messed with it, and we should stop before we get involved in something bad. I'm calling the police.
Ooh, drama.
Turn off the camera already!
The odds of a story like this happening may seem astronomical, but it is true. In June of 2020, several teenagers from Seattle, Washington were passing the time using the Randonautica app, which produces random coordinates for the users to travel to at their own risk. These unsuspecting users were led to a familiar beach in their hometown, only to make a grim discovery: human remains. Just a few days prior, a man named Michael Lee Dudley had evicted the two previous tenants of a spare bedroom, ending their lives in a fit of rage and going through great lengths to cover it up. The remains of the victims were dismembered and packed into garbage bags, then concealed in suitcases, then thrown into the bay not far from their old home. But it just so happened that they would end up being discovered in the most unlikely of ways. If they hadn't been, it's possible that this crime would have gone unsolved. However, unfortunately for the privacy of the victims' families, those who discovered the first suitcase were somehow compelled to post videos of it to TikTok, thus launching the case into viral fame.
This is a true story. It happened to me when I was just a kid, but the thought of it still haunts me to this day. When I was 8 years old, I lived in a suburban neighborhood just south of Kansas. Back then, I lived next to a childhood friend of mine named Ben and his little sister Maggie. We used to play together all the time, especially in their front yard. Even then, I could tell that there was something off about them. Both Ben and Maggie looked skinny and malnourished. Their eyes were always sunken, and their clothes were always tattered. Their house was also a sight for sore eyes. Overgrown lawns, cracked windows, termite-infested walls, you name it. I always chalked all that up to the fact that their mom died a few years back, leaving them with just their dad. Speaking of their dad, I was always scared of him growing up, and with the way he looked, who could blame me? He was very muscular with gruesome burn scars on one side of his face. His eyes were red and bloodshot, and both his legs had been amputated and replaced with prosthetics. But it wasn't just his looks that scared me. He was very grouchy and would yell at Ben and Maggie every chance he got. One time, we were playing on the front lawn when he came home out of the blue. He yelled at Ben for bringing me over to their yard. Then, he held me by the collar and threatened to give me a good beating the next time he saw me near their house. I cried all the way home after that ordeal. After a while, I stopped seeing Maggie entirely. I was so scared that maybe something had happened to her. I once overheard my parents gossiping that Ben's dad was an ex-soldier who'd received a dishonorable discharge when he slaughtered a village full of innocent civilians, and that he probably killed his wife and buried her in the basement because her body was never found. I was horrified by the thought that he had done the same thing to Maggie. Ben and I still kept playing together even though my folks warned me not to. One of his favorite games to play was hide and seek. We would play in my house and in his front yard whenever his dad was gone. Ben was a pro at hiding. You could search for hours without finding him. This always got me really hot and bothered. One day, as we were playing hide and seek in the yard, when Ben suggested something crazy.
Hey, how about we play hide and seek in my house for a change? I don't know. You sure it's safe? What if your dad shows up? What are you, chicken? My dad's not gonna be back till nighttime. We should definitely be done playing by then.
I was a little skeptical, but to be honest, a part of me always wondered what the inside of their house looked like. Also, playing hide and seek inside with lots of great hiding spots would finally give me a chance to get one over Ben. So, I agreed and went into his house. Just as expected, the place was a dump. Busted light bulbs, empty beer cans in every corner, and food stains on the wall. It looked more like a refugee camp than a home. Then, I noticed something suspicious. The basement door was locked and chained shut. I remember wondering if Ben's mom was actually buried down there. Ben told me I could hide anywhere, including the upstairs bedroom, but I was not allowed to go into the basement, no matter the circumstance. Not that I could if I wanted to. The place was locked up tighter than Alcatraz.
All right then, you go hide and I'll count.
I immediately entered the upstairs bedroom and noticed a closet, which I thought would make the perfect hiding spot. I climbed into it and closed the doors, waiting for the game to start. Little did I know the wall behind the closet had fallen apart, and as soon as I leaned my back into it, I fell through the wall and down into the basement. The fall was so bad I hit my head and blanked out. By the time I came to, it was already dark outside, and Ben had been looking all over for me. There was only one light bulb in the basement, and it was dim, so I could hardly see anything. The basement was creepy. There were lots of mounted animals, and each of them looking like they were staring right at me.
Ben? Ben, where are you?
I called for my friend as I searched for a way out. Suddenly, I tripped over something and fell. Looking closely, I realized it was a mound of dirt that looked suspiciously like a grave. My skin turned pale and my throat ran dry as I imagined Ben's mom and his sister buried underneath that dirt pile. As if things weren't spooky enough, I heard crying sounds coming from a chained door in the basement. Was it a ghost? I wondered. I was scared out of my mind, but I had to find out. I inched closer and peeked through the gap in the door. I was shocked to see Maggie chained to a heater. She had marks all over her body, and she looked like she hadn't eaten for days. Before I could react to that, I heard the basement door open. Ben's dad was back, and he was coming into the basement. I quickly hid behind one of the stuffed animals. He saw my footprints and immediately knew someone else was in the basement. He searched for me and was only a few inches away before Ben climbed down the stairs to distract him.
Father, welcome back.
Boy, how many times have I told you to never step foot in this basement?
He grabbed Ben and began slapping him around. I took that opportunity to sneak away, but not before exchanging a quick glance with Ben as I snuck out. As soon as I got home, I told my parents all that happened within a matter of hours. The police and social service workers came over to Ben's house and arrested Ben's dad. Apparently, he disciplined Ben and Maggie by locking them up in the basement without food and water for days. And as for the mound of dirt, thankfully there were no dead bodies in it, just his old war medals and memorabilia. He was suffering from an acute case of PTSD and took it out on his children. Afterward, Ben and Maggie moved to their aunt's place in North Carolina. I never saw or heard from the two again, but I can't shake the feeling of what would have happened to me if their dad had found me in the basement that day. Everyone thinks I'm dead, but I'm not. If he finds out that I'm alive, I'm not sure what he'll do. So, in order to protect myself and keep living my life, I need to stay hidden from him forever. It happened a few months ago when I was on a honeymoon with my husband. Shreen and I were exploring the beautiful city where he had decided to take me. Oh, look at that architecture. The beauty of this place.
Make sure you snap a picture of me in front of that fountain.
I posed in front of the beautiful fountain, my hands above my head and my mouth wide open in laughter. We were having such a wonderful time until we got lost and decided to take a shortcut through a dark alley. That's when my life changed forever. It was already dusk and my better instincts told me not to. Still, my husband put my mind at ease. Oh, come on, Holly. Nothing bad ever happens in a place like this.
Fine. I guess you're right. Let's go.
We walked for what seemed like an eternity, the cold air of the alleyway stinging my face. I looked up at the night sky to admire the stars, listening to the footsteps of my husband grow distant. It was relaxing here. Suddenly, however, I heard footsteps behind us. Before I knew it, two masked figures had emerged from the shadows and were quickly hurrying towards us. Chills ran down my spine as the figures came closer, their faces hidden behind masks. I turned down the alleyway, looking for my husband.
Shreen? Where are you? Shreen!
I called out for him, but he was already gone. With horror, I turned back toward the masked figures and saw them sprinting toward me now, their footsteps echoing in my ears. The faces beneath their masks looked scarred and blotted, as if they'd been severely burned. Their eyes were blood red, and I could see the insanity in their stares.
What do you want? Stop! Get away from me!
I knew I had to escape, and quickly ran for my life, dodging around boxes and old dumpsters, listening to their footsteps growing ever closer. Eventually, however, I managed to find my way onto a busy street. The next thing I knew, my husband was there in front of me, looking around as if he was searching for something. He was shocked to see me and smiled with relief. "Holly, where have you been? I've been looking all over for you."
Back there! Two men were chasing me! Where were you?
I could barely catch my breath, and my husband pointed toward the alleyway as I panted. "Back in the alley? I don't see anyone, darling. Are you sure you weren't just imagining it?" I shook my head and hugged him tightly, relieved to be back in his arms. We returned to the hotel, my heart still pounding from the experience. Eventually, I calmed down. I decided I was never going into another alleyway again, and at the very least, not lagging behind my husband. Later that night, after I had fallen asleep, I awoke suddenly to a strange noise. I heard the lock clicking and the door beginning to creak open. I could see it from our bed, the door silently sliding open. Inch by inch, it slid effortlessly open, but I couldn't move from the shock. It wasn't weird that the door was being opened. What was the weirdest part about it was that I remembered, as clear as day, deadbolting it before I fell asleep. Why wasn't it deadbolted? Before I had time to think, however, I saw two masked figures step into the room. I gasped, my heart racing and terror rushing through me. It was the same two masked men from the alleyway, and they advanced silently into the room. I was terrified, and I was about to scream when suddenly a hand clapped over my mouth. I stilled, recognizing that it was the hand of my husband. Struggling, I looked at him in horror as the two men in masks taped my mouth shut. He must have understood that I was trying to ask him what was happening. His horrific face gleamed in the moonlight. I saw who he really was for the first time. His evil eyes and foul mouth told me everything. His scars, which I had found charming, had taken on an evil glint as I realized what he really was. "You really thought you had gotten away from them in the alleyway, didn't you?" I didn't hire them for nothing. And just like that, the men had taped my arms together and began to drag me from the hotel. They loaded me into the trunk of their car, and the last thing I remember seeing before the trunk shut was my husband watching from the window. Nearly 2 hours later, the car stopped in an isolated area and the trunk was opened. The two masked men roughly pulled me out, then ripped the tape off my mouth.
Please, don't do this! Please!
You got lucky this time. If your husband wasn't such a cheapskate, you'd be in a ditch right now, but he didn't pay enough. We'll take the money and leave you here. From now on, you're on your own.
At that, they got into their car and drove off. I was left alone in the middle of nowhere, scared, exhausted, and sobbing. It felt like a nightmare that wouldn't end. Now I had to avoid my husband and his associates, never going into a place where they might find me. I walked for miles through the wilderness, till I came across a road and managed to hitchhike to the nearest town. I know my husband thinks I'm dead, but if he ever found out that I was still alive, then my life would be in danger. This is why I must remain hidden and take every precaution so that he never finds me again. I still don't know why he wanted me gone. I don't know if it was because of a mistress or something else, but I do know that if he ever finds me, then my life will be in grave danger. The thrilling tale you just watched is based on the real-life story of Annie Dewani, whose husband got rid of her. She and her husband were on a honeymoon trip when she was abducted and disposed of. Her abductees were later identified and blamed her husband, Shreen Dewani, for hiring them. Although he was later acquitted, many still believe that Shreen Dewani allegedly was responsible for his wife's attack and abduction.
Grabbing the camera, I turned to my team who was waiting for me in the car.
Let's do this, guys!
Hopping into the seat, I waited impatiently for Dave to rev up the engine and we were on our way. The video idea was perfect and was sure to blow up our YouTube channel. Who could resist a viral ding-dong ditch video?
Okay, guys, we need to find the perfect house for this. The madder the owner gets, the better, okay?
We drove around for several hours, hopping out and playing pranks on several houses. Some of the owners had some good reactions, and I was convinced that this video was going to be sick. Eventually, however, the sun began to set in the sky and the evening chill set in.
One last house for the night, guys. How about that one?
I don't know, man. It looks abandoned.
Exactly. Less work for us and we can say it was haunted or something.
After handing the camera off to Dave, I hopped out of the car and snuck my way up the path, my heart pounding in my chest. I took a deep breath and steadied myself, then reached up to knock on the door. I threw myself around the corner of the house just in case anybody came to the door, but I already knew that there wasn't going to be any answer. The house was abandoned after all, which was why I didn't even bother to run away from the window I had flattened myself against. Suddenly, however, the faces of my friends in the car grew pale, and Dave pointed at the window behind me. I raised an eyebrow at him, then turned around. I threw myself backward, my heart pounding in my chest, as I saw the horrific figure standing in the dimly lit window. He didn't move or say anything. He just stood there watching us. His eyes were red and almost looked reptilian in nature. His old face was drawn taut as if he hadn't eaten in ages. His nose was gigantic and covered in warts, and his toothless grin was sinister. I felt a chill run down my spine. What a weirdo. Backing up, I ran back to the car, watching my friends laugh from the window.
Whoa, what a creep. And here I thought we were just going to Ding Dong Ditch.
We were shaking off the weird feeling when Dave suddenly yelled,
"He's following us!"
We all turned around and saw the figure getting into a car, the engine roaring to life.
Keep the camera recording, Dave. We don't want to miss this. Hey, get out! Out of the car! We need to record this. It'll be a viral hit.
We piled out of the car and waited for the creepy old man to come to confront us. He finally reached us and stopped right in front of us, his eyes fixed on me. He got out of the car, breathing heavily, his hands clenched into fists at his sides. I stepped forward, trying to be brave.
What do you want? It was just a prank, man.
He didn't say anything though, and just stared at us. After a minute or two, I motioned my friends back into the car and we left.
I thought he was gonna do something cool for the content. That was boring.
We drove down the street, and I guess I thought that the car trailing behind us was just some random vehicle. Eventually, Dave dropped me off at my house, and the rest of my friends drove off. As I began to walk toward my door, I noticed the same vehicle which had been behind us parked across the street. The man was out there, watching me. I froze in place, my heart pounding in my chest. He had followed us all the way and now he was here. I took a deep breath and tried to calm myself down as I slowly backed away from the house. In an instant, however, the man had leaped out of his car. His old body moved frighteningly quickly and he ran toward me, a devilish scream of anger coming from his throat. I stumbled back, my feet unable to keep up with my racing mind.
Ding dong! Ding dong!
The old man screamed at me, his raspy voice creating chills that ran down my spine. In an instant, he had closed the distance, and he was nearly on me. I leaped to my feet, my heart pounding in my chest as I stumbled along the street, running as fast as I could. I could hear him behind me, his footsteps never getting closer but never farther either. I could hear him screaming behind me, some incoherent gibberish about pranks, ding-dong ditch, and about our crew. I heard him screaming and yelling and knew that if I stopped running for an instant, he'd be on me. I didn't want to know what would happen to me.
Get away from me!
Eventually, as I ran into a busier part of town, he disappeared.